Chapter 675. This is the 100 Formation Pagoda? He looked around in surprise. What rich and pure spiritual energy! The 100 Formation Pagoda's gift was not only the knowledge of formations. After a cultivator passed the test, a large amount of pure and rich heaven and earth spiritual chi would appear. Cultivators could use this place to quickly recover their energy and prepare for the next test. While Lu Ye's soul was overwhelmed by the huge amount of information, a large amount of spiritual energy suddenly emerged in this small space. The small room was almost filled with white fog. Having traveled extensively with Lu Yi wasn't someone who hadn't seen the world. She had stayed in both Grade C and Grade A spirit lands. What surprised her was that the density and purity of the spiritual energy here was even more exaggerated than Grade A spirit lands. It was almost to the extent that it could only be obtained by using spirit lots. She tested it and found that her intuition was right. Even if the spiritual energy here wasn't as good as using spirit lots, it wasn't far off. She could quickly absorb it and improve her foundation. Such a cultivation environment could be said to be the dream of any cultivator. Therefore, Yi didn't hesitate at all and hurriedly started cultivating. On the side, the pain in Lu Ye's soul gradually subsided under the effect of the soul-cleansing water. Large amounts of knowledge regarding formations surged in his mind, all of which he had never come into contact with before. However, he wasn't in a hurry to investigate these things. Instead, he first constructed small spirit-gathering funnels on his body. The current him didn't have any difficulty in constructing these small spirit-gathering funnels. It could be said that a small spirit-gathering funnel would take shape with just a thought. As the funnels appeared, a devouring power came from his body and devoured the surrounding spiritual energy. As the number of small spirit-gathering funnels increased, the devouring power also became stronger. In the end, Lu Ye's entire body seemed to have turned into an invisible vortex. One could see with the naked eye that the spiritual energy was constantly flowing in his direction and then disappearing. Although he had already guessed that the spiritual energy in the 100 Formation Pagoda would be very pure, the results still exceeded Lu Ye's expectations. This kind of cultivation efficiency that was comparable to using spirit lots was definitely what he needed the most now. The strength of his soul far exceeded his physical strength. In the end, it was still a hidden danger. If he could improve his cultivation in the 100 Formation Pagoda this time, he could resolve this hidden danger. The method of constructing small spirit-gathering funnels for cultivation and recovery had helped Lu Yi a lot on many occasions. Just like now. When ordinary formation cultivators came here, even if they passed the test and obtained the rewards, they would have to quickly recover. During this process, they had to concentrate and couldn't do anything else, and they wouldn't be able to improve too much in a short period of time, which would affect their performance on the next level. Of course. Of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Of them. But Lu Yi was different. After the small funnel was completed, he allowed the surrounding spirit mist to enter his body. He could fully immerse himself in comprehending the gifts of the 100 Formation Pagoda. He had more time than other array cultivators to use these gifts to improve his array Dao attainments. His mind was immersed and time passed. Then, at a certain moment, the surrounding spiritual fog suddenly disappeared without a trace of it. He silently estimated that it had been about 6 hours since he entered the 100 Formation Pagoda. This was about the same as the previous Pagoda challenge. Every level of the 100 Formation Pagoda had a time limit of 6 hours. Those who passed the test within this time limit would receive the rewards of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Therefore, the less time one spent in the test, the greater the rewards, and the more time one would have to recover and comprehend. Lu Yi only spent half an hour to break through the first level. He spent the rest of the time reaping the benefits. The river of spirit power in his body had clearly grown stronger. His greatest gain was in the area of formations. That gift was so huge that his spirit couldn't bear it. The benefits it brought to his formation were unimaginable. He naturally couldn't fully comprehend it in less than 6 hours. But even so, it was enough for him to take a step forward in his formation Dao. It was more than enough for him to deal with the next level's test. Lu Yi was very confident in this. Lu Yi didn't need to give any instructions. Yi had already flashed into Hu Po's body. Hu Po reluctantly walked over to Lu Yi, who grabbed it and stuffed it into the spirit beast pouch. Just as he was done, he couldn't help but feel like he was being transported. He appeared in another small space similar to the previous one. A stone brick protruded from the wall beside him. Time was of the essence. Lu Yi didn't hesitate. He walked up to the brick and pressed it down. As the brick fell, the scenery around him changed. Lu Yi appeared in an extremely spacious area. A dot of fluorescent light suddenly appeared in front of him. He raised his hand and touched it. A message immediately appeared in his mind. The test this time was to set up a formation according to the 100 Formation Pagoda's requirements. The required formation wasn't anything difficult. It was just a spirit-gathering formation. It could be said that the first formation Lu Yi knew how to set up was a spirit-gathering formation. That was because he had obtained spirit-gathering spirit runes earlier. But the 100 Formation Pagoda's test naturally wasn't that simple. There were requirements for the range of the formation, the number of formation flags used, and the effects achieved. There was a minimum standard to pass this level's test. With Lu Ye's current attainments in formations, it wasn't difficult to reach the minimum standard. Almost as soon as he discovered this level's test, Lu Yi already had several plans in his mind. But he naturally wasn't satisfied with reaching the minimum standard. In a test like this, the better he could do, the greater the reward he would receive. Standing in place, Lu Yi pondered for a moment. Soon, a plan formed in his mind and he immediately put it into action. Formation flags flew in all directions, forming the basic framework of the formation. Lu Yi then activated the spirit-gathering spirit runes to form the core of the formation. As his spirit energy surged, his powerful spirit energy allowed him to perfectly control the subtle changes in his spirit energy. Complex runes took shape in the framework of the formation, transforming into the embryonic form of a large formation. To him, this level's test was actually simpler than the previous one. It required less effort. Thus, in just half an incense stick's worth of time, a large spirit-gathering formation was formed. When the last rune was embedded, the entire formation was activated and activated. The surrounding scenery changed once more. Like a bubble popping, Lu Yi reappeared in the small sealed room. Large amounts of rich and pure heaven and earth spirit energy surged out of thin air, accompanied by a ball of fluorescent light. Following his previous plan, Lu Yi first released Hu Po from the spirit beast pouch. Almost without any instructions, he flashed out and took out the jade bottle containing the soul water, ready for battle. Looking at each other, Yi nodded slightly. Only then did Lu Yi raise his hand and point at the ball of fluorescent light. The fluorescent light shattered, and he once again felt as if the entire starry sky was about to collapse. Outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. Today, the 100 Formation Pagoda had resonated twice in less than half an incense stick's worth of time apart. The formation cultivators gathered here were rather excited. After all, this was a grand occasion that they had never encountered before. It also gave them a lot of excitement to talk about. When Lu Yi had arrived earlier, some of the formation cultivators here were sparring, some were meditating with their eyes closed, and some were even discussing the Tao. But now, all the formation cultivators were gathered in groups of 3 to 5, talking loudly about something. This was a scene that was rarely seen on normal days. Usually, even if the formation cultivators here were discussing the Tao, they would control their volume and not disturb others. But today's grand occasion had broken the shackles of the past and allowed them to indulge themselves. Even though they weren't the ones who had triggered the 100 Formation Pagoda's resonance, they still felt honored to have encountered such an event. There were even formation cultivators guarding the entrance of the 100 Formation Pagoda, asking everyone they met if they were the ones who had triggered the resonance. But they couldn't get a definite answer. I wonder who the two Taoists who triggered the resonance are. If we can confirm their identities, perhaps we can ask them for advice. What a pity, what a pity. A youth in green said. Those who could trigger the 100 Formation Pagoda's resonance here would definitely be formation experts in the future. Naturally, everyone would be happy to befriend such people. It wasn't shameful to ask them for advice on formations. As for factions, The unique atmosphere of the 100 Formation Pagoda had blurred the boundaries of factions. The cultivators here were all formation cultivators who yearned for the Tao of formations. But it was a pity that the people outside didn't know who had triggered the resonance. Even those who challenged the pagoda might not know that they had triggered the resonance. Taoist Luo has already passed the 50th level. Your future is bound to be limitless. You might not lose out to others. Someone flattered from the side. The 100 Formation Pagoda in the Cloud River battlefield started from the 34th level. This cultivator surnamed Luo had passed the 50th level, which was an extremely impressive result. One had to know that many of the formation cultivators here hadn't even passed the 40th level. Their method of challenging the 100 Formation Pagoda was different from Lu Ye's. They basically challenged one level at a time. If they failed, there was nothing to say. Even if they succeeded, they would exhaust themselves and the pressure on their spirit would force them to leave the pagoda first and enter again when they were ready. The 100 Formation Pagoda would record the levels they had passed. The next time they entered, they would directly go to the next level. It wasn't just the Cloud River battlefield. It was the same when the cultivators of the Sky Expanse sect challenged the 100 Formation Pagoda. That was why Lu Yi had caused such a huge uproar in the Sky Expanse sect when he had passed the 33rd level in one go. However, this news didn't spread because under the orders of the Sky Expanse sect's sect master Yu Shao and head elder Bai Qian, all the Sky Expanse sect disciples who knew of this news swore a heavenly secret oath to never spread the news of Lu Ye's challenge. 7017K. Chapter 676. The Sky Expanse sect's measures were undoubtedly to protect Lu Yi. After all, Lu Yi had given Bai Qian some soul-cleansing water back then. For Bai Qian and Yu Shao, who were stuck at the 9th Order True Lake Realm, soul-cleansing water was the treasure they coveted the most. With the help of soul-cleansing water, they had hopes of breaking through their shackles and reaching the Spirit Sea Realm. However, from what had happened afterwards, it seemed that Lu Yi had stirred up quite a bit of trouble in the Spirit Stream battlefield and had been targeted by the Myriad Devil Ridge. Even now, the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge still wanted to kill him. Many of the 100 Formation Pagoda's array cultivators had stayed here for a long time and were familiar with each other. The cultivator surnamed Luo who had spoken earlier was one of the best. Passing the 50th level of the 100 Formation Pagoda was something to be proud of in the entire Cloudy River battlefield. Amidst the crowd of formation cultivators, cultivator Luo smiled bitterly and shook his head. My master once said that my talent is neither good nor bad. In this lifetime of formation Tao, I am not a grandmaster, but I have no hopes of becoming a grandmaster. There was no way he could become a master, but there was no hope for him to become a grandmaster. This was the evaluation his master had given him. To put it simply, it was not a problem for him to become an array master, but it was basically impossible for him to become a grandmaster. In the past, cultivator Luo wasn't too convinced by this evaluation. However, as he spent more time at the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had no choice but to accept reality. Ever since he passed the 50th floor of the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had already attempted to pass the 51st floor 3 times. However, he had failed all 3 times. Perhaps if he cultivated bitterly for a few more days, he might be able to pass the 51st floor, but what about after that? The 100 Formation Pagoda had 66 levels. The further one went, the more difficult the test would be. Even if he spent his entire life here, he might not be able to pass all 66 levels of the 100 Formation Pagoda. However, even if he was a formation cultivator, how could he be willing to be stuck at the Cloud River tier forever? Now that he was already at the 9th Order Cloud River realm, he was qualified to break through to the True Lake realm, but he had not chosen to do so because he was obsessed with advancing further in the 100 Formation Tower. However, what he saw and heard today was like the evening drum and morning bell that woke him up. In this world, everyone's aptitude was different. Others could easily resonate with the 100 Formation Pagoda when they entered, but he never had the capital to do so. In the end, as a cultivator, cultivation was still the most important thing. In his heart, he decided to try one last time. This time, regardless of whether he succeeded or failed, he would choose to advance to the true lake stage and leave the cloudy river battlefield. Fellow Taoist Luo, there's no need to belittle yourself. Before the formation cultivator could finish speaking, he suddenly stopped. At the same time, the surrounding noises quieted down. All the array cultivators looked at the 100 formation pagoda in shock. That strange rhythm had appeared again. The third resonance of the 100 formation pagoda. What's the situation? Some array cultivators even suspected that they were dreaming. In the past, the resonance would only appear once every 3 to 5 months. It was already shocking enough that it appeared twice today, but there was actually a third time? Which powerhouse had triggered this resonance? Why are there so many genius array cultivators challenging the 100 formation pagoda today? All sorts of emotions surged, but it did not stop the array cultivators from making the most appropriate response. It was rare for the 100 formation pagoda to resonate, and that peculiar rhythm was very beneficial to array cultivators' enlightenment. Therefore, all the array cultivators hurriedly sat up straight and concentrated, silently comprehending. On the 35th level of the 100 formation pagoda, Lu Yi once again used his spirit cleansing skills to alleviate the impact and pain on his soul. He began to construct a small spirit gathering funnel, and as he cultivated, he comprehended his gains and prepared for the next level's test. In the blink of an eye, another 6 hours had passed. The test on the 36th level had begun. The array cultivators outside the 100 formation pagoda gradually went crazy. This was because something incomprehensible had happened in the past 2 days. After the first resonance of the 100 formation pagoda, the second resonance followed after half an hour. 6 hours later, the third resonance followed. Another 6 hours passed. Another 6 hours passed. Another 6 hours passed. Another 6 hours passed. After that, the 100 formation pagoda would resonate once every 6 hours. Was the 100 formation pagoda broken? Almost all the array cultivators could not help but have this thought. Otherwise, how could there be so many consecutive resonations? However, after some array cultivators boldly entered the 100 formation pagoda to test it out, they confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the pagoda. In other words, the 100 formation pagoda was not broken. These resonations were really caused by an array cultivator challenging the pagoda. At first, the array cultivators thought that the resonations were caused by different array cultivators. However, as time passed and the number of resonations increased, everyone realized that this was not the case. This was because the time between each resonance was almost 6 hours. This time was almost the same as the time limit for every level of the 100 formation pagoda. This was thought-provoking. The array cultivators couldn't help but think of an unimaginable possibility. There was an unimaginably talented array cultivator challenging the pagoda and obtaining excellent results on every level. That was why the 100 formation pagoda resonated with him every time. But was this really possible? This was simply unimaginable. But other than this explanation, there seemed to be no other better explanation. What could be confirmed now was that the array cultivator who triggered the first and second resonance was not the same person. Because the time interval was too short. What the array cultivators could not figure out was whether the subsequent resonations were triggered by the first person or the second person. The news continued to spread. 30 miles away, 100 Formation City was also in an uproar as a large number of array cultivators rushed over. Usually, many array cultivators lived in the 100 Formation City. Only a small portion of the array cultivators lingered outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. However, as the news spread, more than 1,000 array cultivators gathered outside the 100 Formation Pagoda in less than half a day. Moreover, even more array cultivators were on their way. No one wanted to miss such a grand event. No one wanted to miss such an opportunity. Although they were not the ones challenging the pagoda and resonating with the pagoda, they still benefited greatly from the enlightenment. Soon, the area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda was packed with people. As far as the eye could see, a sea of blackheads had found a place to sit down cross-legged. Fellow Taoist Luo, this is the 10th time, right? A familiar cultivator near the array cultivator surnamed Luo asked. The array cultivator surnamed Luo nodded. Yes, it's the 10th time. On average, there was a resonance every 6 hours. Now, almost 60 hours had passed. The previous resonance was indeed the 10th time. From the initial confusion to shock, to the current numbness, this was the true portrayal of his heart. It was also the true portrayal of all the array cultivators gathered here. Even these Cloud River Tier cultivators, who were all at the Cloud River Tier, were shocked to the core by the repeated occurrences of events that were rarely seen on a daily basis. In fact, these occurrences even occurred in a regular pattern. I keep feeling that this is not man-made, but rather a reaction of the 100 Formation Pagoda itself, another person said. Even though they had already verified that there was no problem with the 100 Formation Pagoda, many still felt that the resonations were not man-made. Perhaps some unknown change had occurred in the 100 Formation Pagoda. Of course, this change was something the array cultivators were happy to see. If the 100 Formation Pagoda could maintain such a resonance from now on, the array Tao of the entire 9 provinces would definitely rise to a new level. After being enlightened again and again, even the stupidest of array cultivators would have gained quite a bit of knowledge. Gazing in the direction of the 100 Formation Pagoda, the array cultivator surnamed Luo did not speak. No one knew whether the resonations were man-made or a reaction of the 100 Formation Pagoda itself. If it was the latter, then so be it, but if it was the former, then the person challenging the pagoda must be a rare genius. The level of array Tao he could reach would be unreachable by all the array cultivators in the 9 provinces. He couldn't help but think of something. When he had returned to the sect last time, his master had told him that someone had once challenged the 33rd level of the 100 Formation Pagoda in one go, triggering 33 resonations, and that person was the famous Lu Ye of the Jade Blood sect. To be honest, if his master hadn't told him these things, he wouldn't have believed it no matter what. Challenging 33 levels in one go and triggering 33 resonations, was this something a human could do? His master had not told him this to discourage him, but to warn him that there was always someone better than him in the field of array Tao. He did not want him to be too stubborn. He had not thought too much about it before, but now that he thought about it, his heart suddenly thumped. Could it be that the person challenging the pagoda was Lu Ye? Since he could trigger 33 resonations in the 100 Formation Pagoda, his performance in the 100 Formation Pagoda on the Cloudy River battlefield would not be too bad. Array cultivators were entering and exiting the 100 Formation Pagoda frequently, so he had not noticed whether it was Lu Ye who had entered the pagoda. But even if it was really him, his performance was too exaggerated. The difficulty of the 100 Formation Pagoda on the Cloudy River battlefield was incomparable to that of the 100 Formation Pagoda on the Cloudy River battlefield. Just as his thoughts were churning in his mind, a strange rhythm appeared once again. Someone in the crowd exclaimed, "It's the 11th time." This number had already excluded the first resonance and counted from the second resonance. Because the array cultivators could confirm that the person who had triggered the first and second resonance was not the same person, but the person who had triggered the subsequent resonance was definitely one of the two. 11 resonations in a row was such a terrifying result. Since ancient times, no array cultivator had ever achieved it. Even if someone had managed to trigger consecutive resonations, it was at most 2 or 3 times. 11 resonations not only broke the previous record, but also stood at a height that a junior array cultivator could not hope to achieve. Lu Ye's talent in array Tao was not bad, but he was far from the level of an eternal genius that cultivator surnamed Luo had imagined. The reason he was invincible in the 100 Formation Pagoda was because of the soul-cleansing water. This soul treasure that could make divine sea cultivators jealous was now being used by him to calm the impact on his soul, alleviating the pain and pressure. 7017K. Chapter 677. If any divine sea realm cultivator were to find out that Lu Yi was using the soul-cleansing water to calm his spirit, they would definitely reprimand him for being a wastrel. Without the soul-cleansing water, Lu Yi would only be able to clear 3 or 4 levels before collapsing. However, with the soul-cleansing water relieving the pressure on his spirit, he could do things that ordinary cultivators would not dare to imagine. Huge gains. After clearing level after level, his attainments in formations could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. Compared to 2 days ago, his attainments in formations could be said to have risen by a level. Such gains were something that many formation cultivators could not hope to achieve in their entire lives. However, for him, it was merely a matter of a day and a half. This was the 100 Formation Pagoda. The mysteries of this pagoda were far beyond the imagination of the world. Before Lu Yi, no one had been able to exploit the mysteries of the 100 Formation Pagoda to such an extent. Passing a levels test in an extremely short amount of time, and then obtaining enormous benefits. After resting for nearly 6 hours, he would enter the next level in his peak state. Passing an even more difficult test, he would obtain even more benefits. It was truly like a rolling snowball, forming a virtuous cycle. Compared to the gains in formations, the improvement in one's cultivation was secondary. In fact, Lu Yi did not even pay much attention to this matter. After each test, he would construct a small spirit-gathering funnel immediately and then leave it be. He did not deliberately calculate how many levels he had cleared. In any case, as long as he had the soul-cleansing water, he felt that even if the 100 Formation Pagoda was complete and there were 100 levels, he would be able to clear them all in one go. At a certain moment, Lu Yi was carefully comprehending the gift from the 100 Formation Pagoda when a buzzing sound came from within his body. It was a sound akin to the surging waves of a great river. Immediately, he snapped out of his trance and sensed his body. It wasn't until this moment that he realized that the spiritual energy river in his body was extremely full. As the small spiritual energy gathering funnels scattered around his body continued to work, pure and rich spiritual energy was constantly being absorbed into his body. The feeling of fullness became more and more intense. He was about to break through. He had an epiphany and immediately guarded his mind. The movement of the river became more and more obvious, and the sound of the waves became clearer and clearer. At this moment, the long river of spiritual energy seemed to have a life of its own, constantly contracting and expanding. Until a certain moment, along with the expansion of the river of spirit energy, an invisible wave of spirit energy spread out from Lu Yi. As the wave of spirit energy spread out, the invisible shackles in his body were also broken, and the feeling of fullness disappeared. All kinds of strange noises quieted down in an instant. The surging spirit power quickly circulated in the long river, and the speed of the spirit power flow was a bit faster than before. Lu Yi also felt as if she had been reborn. 6th Order Cloud River Realm. Silently sensing his body, Lu Yi could clearly feel that the volume of the long river of spiritual power in his body was much larger than before. When a cultivator is in the spirit stream realm, the main goal of cultivation is to open one spirit aperture after another. At the Great Circle, there are 360 spirit apertures. Of course, everyone's aptitude is different. Most cultivators are unable to open 360 spirit apertures. Some can only open 200 spirit apertures, while others can open 300 spirit apertures. The spirit stream realm is the foundation of a cultivator. At this level, the number of spirit apertures you open will basically affect the cultivator's lifetime achievements. Naturally, the more spirit apertures you open, the better. However, the heavens will always leave a way out. Even if you don't reach the Great Circle realm, a cultivator can still advance to the Cloud River realm. However, the minimum requirement is to open 240 spirit apertures and learn a heaven-grade secret art. This is because only the heaven-grade secret art can allow a cultivator to connect all the spirit apertures together and form a long river of spirit energy. Only when the long river of spirit energy is formed in the body can a cultivator be considered to have advanced to the Cloud River realm. At the Cloud River realm, a cultivator has to continuously increase the volume of the long river of spirit energy in their body until this long river of spirit energy covers their entire body. At that time, the long river of spirit energy is not just a long river, but a lake of spirit energy that accumulates in the cultivator's body. This is the true lake realm. When spirit energy covers the entire body, a cultivator's control of spirit energy will rise to a whole new level. Therefore, the strength of a true lake realm cultivator is much stronger than a cloud river realm cultivator. Although a Cloud River Realm cultivator can also use their spirit energy to cover every corner of their body, in the end, there is still a process of spirit energy flow. The spirit energy needs to flow out from the long river of spirit energy, and then under the cultivator's control, it flows to the appropriate location. However, on a true Lake Realm cultivator, even a random piece of skin contains pure spirit energy. Lu Yi has advanced to the 6th order Cloud River Realm, and is only 3 minor realms away from the true Lake Realm. Moreover, he could feel that the improvement brought about by his advancement this time was much greater than before. This is a strange thing. Every realm of a cultivator is divided into 9 minor realms. Generally speaking, the 4th and 7th realms are the thresholds. The advancement of the 4th order and 7th order realms often gives people the feeling of a sudden increase in strength. There seems to be no such thing in the 6th order realm. But soon, Lu Yi figured out the reason. Previously, he received the baptism of the Heaven's secret bestowment in Fox Immortal Valley, which greatly increased his foundation. The increase in foundation will not be immediately apparent, but will slowly reveal itself as his cultivation increases. In other words, the growth of other cultivators from the 5th order Cloud River Realm to the 6th order realm is not as great as Lu Ye's. For him, this is naturally a good thing. There are always people from Myriad Demon Ridge watching him, chasing and intercepting him all day long, so the stronger he is, the more capital he has to protect himself. The hidden danger that Lu Yi was worried about is also solved. When he returned from Immortal Essence City, he always had a faint feeling that his body could not accommodate his soul. Now that his cultivation has increased, that feeling disappeared. Of course, this is only temporary. He has so much soul-cleansing water in his hands, and this time, he is still continuously consuming it in the 100 Formation Pagoda. Although it is to relieve the pressure on his soul and the impact of the huge amount of information, it is also silently strengthening his soul. If this continues, it is very likely that the hidden danger that has just been solved will appear again. Therefore, the road of cultivation is long and heavy. This kind of happiness is difficult for the other cultivators of the 9 states to understand. How many levels have I passed? Lu Yi collected his thoughts and asked. 15, who was meditating, answered. There were 15 floors, and each floor had less than 6 hours of cultivation time. The cultivation environment here was almost the same as using the spirit lots. In total, the time he spent cultivating in the 100 Formation Pagoda was equivalent to using 3 golden spirit lots. 3 golden spirit lots are naturally not enough for him to break through, but after the Fox Immortal Valley, he has taken a large number of spirit pills every day. After such a long time, he has already taken a large step forward in the 5th order realm. The 100 Formation Pagoda has a total of 33 levels, which means that there are 18 more levels, which can provide him with 3 more golden spirit lots. It is not enough to break through to the 7th order Cloud River Realm, but it can increase his cultivation by a lot, shortening the time he needs to break through. It is a bit of a fly in the ointment, but it is still acceptable. The small space fell silent again. He continued to cultivate, while Hoopa swallowed a monster core and fell asleep at the side. Lu Yi also immersed himself in comprehending the gift of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Time passed by, and when the surrounding world energy suddenly disappeared, Lu Yi stood up and waited for the next test. Outside the 100 Formation Pagoda, there is a sea of people. Almost half of the people in 100 Formation City ran over, and there are many who have received the news and are rushing over in a hurry. In the beginning, there were still people who thought that the resonance of the 100 Formation Pagoda was caused by someone, but now there are not many who still think so. Because it is too exaggerated. In 5 days, a total of 20 resonances, which is an average of 1 every 6 hours. This is not something that can be done by a human. After confirming that it was not caused by an array cultivator, most of the array cultivators felt much better. People are like this after all. Sometimes, they don't care too much about their mediocrity, or they have already accepted it, but if there is someone too outstanding, they will always feel inferior. Fortunately, such a thing did not happen. The resonance of the 100 Formation Pagoda was not caused by someone. Only the cultivator surnamed Luo would raise his head to look at the 100 Formation Pagoda from time to time in his free time, his heart constantly churning with doubts. Is that person challenging the pagoda? Is the resonance really not caused by someone? But whether it was man-made or not, he had reaped a great harvest this time. Originally, he had no confidence in passing the 51st level, but in these 5 days under the 20 resonations of enlightenment, he felt that his array Tao had clearly improved. He was also confident that he could pass the 51st level. He was not in a hurry to move, because he was not sure if there would be more resonances. Turning his head to look around, the noise and clamor around him made him frown. When did the outside of the 100 Formation Pagoda become so chaotic? In the past, although there were many cultivators gathered here, they were all array cultivators. They would be careful not to disturb others when they gathered here to discuss the Tao, but now, with so many people, the scene was chaotic. The cultivator surnamed Luo shook his head and did not pay attention to it, carefully reflecting on his enlightenment just now. At this moment, in front of the safe passage leading from 100 Formation City to the 100 Formation Pagoda, a few figures rushed over, covered in dust. If Lu Yi was here, he would probably cry out in alarm that they were haunting him. It could not be helped, because the few people who came here were all 9th Order cultivators who had chased after him before. Xia Liang, Tan Xing, Sacred Flame Sects Chu Yun and Zhou Pei were among them. They had chased after Lu Yi to the Pai River, but in the end, Lu Yi was rescued by a mysterious woman and escaped with the help of a transmission array. Just as they were worrying about where to find Lu Yi's whereabouts, they suddenly received news that Lu Yi had appeared outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. Thinking that Lu Yi was an array cultivator, it was reasonable for him to run to the 100 Formation Pagoda. So, these people rushed here in a hurry, afraid that Lu Yi would escape again if they were late. They did not come together, but just happened to arrive here together. It could be considered a coincidence. 7017K. Chapter 679. In the cultivation world of the 9 prefectures, there were many types of formation flags. There were a total of 108 types, which corresponded to the number of heavenly spirits and earthly fiends. Every formation required different formation flags, and the combination of different formation flags could often bring unexpected changes to the formation. Therefore, brilliant formation cultivators had their own unique understanding and experience in the use of formation flags. The same formation might have different power when set up by different formation cultivators. This was not only dependent on the formation cultivator's level of attainment, but also the choice of formation flags. There were many ways to do this. He had obtained 32 formation flags from the 100 Formation Pagoda and 32 more this time. Altogether, he had a total of 64 flags. Although it was not enough to complete a set, 64 formation flags were enough to deal with most situations. Moreover, Lu Yi usually did not use these special formation flags. He would either refine them himself or buy them from the Tianji treasury. It would not be a pity even if they were damaged or lost. After inspecting the 32 formation flags, Lu Yi carefully put them away. Then he began to construct small spirit-gathering funnels. He cultivated while comprehending the enormous amount of formation information in his mind. He had passed the 33rd level of the 100 Formation Pagoda. There was no more level. When the time limit for staying on this level was up, he would be sent out of the pagoda. Vaguely, Lu Yi felt that he had forgotten something. Normally, this would not have happened to him. However, his spirit was now full and he did not have the energy to think about other things. He had even forgotten to release Hooper earlier. It did not seem to be a particularly important matter. Lu Yi decided not to think too much about it. 6 hours passed in the blink of an eye. When the surrounding spirit chi suddenly dissipated, Lu Yi felt an enormous and irresistible repulsive force. He had to leave. He silently sensed his body's condition. Apart from the enormous pressure on his spirit, everything else was fine. It could be said that he had gained a lot from the 100 Formation Pagoda this time. It was several times more than what he had gained in the Sky Expanse sect. At the very least, he had not felt his spirit being full in the Sky Expanse sect. This meant that the gift he had gained in the 100 Formation Pagoda this time could not be compared to the previous time. And this was under the premise that the power of his spirit was several times stronger than before. Even though such gains had already allowed his attainments in the Tao of formations to increase greatly, it still hadn't arrived at its limits. Once he digested and stabilized all the things in his mind one day, he wondered how much his attainments in the Tao of formations would improve. In addition, Yang Kai's cultivation had risen from the 5th order to the 6th order. Although it was only a small advancement, his strength had undoubtedly increased significantly. As the repulsive force surged, the space around Lu Yi began to distort. Instinctively, he put the amber back into his spirit beast pouch. Then, he activated his spirit energy to protect himself. He raised his hand and placed it on the hilt of the Panshan saber at his waist. He didn't know what he was guarding against, but he felt that it was the right thing to do. In the next moment, his vision blurred and he appeared at the entrance of the 100 Formation Pagoda. The scene that entered his field of vision stunned Lu Yi, because as far as the eye could see, there was a sea of people. Were there so many people outside the 100 Formation Pagoda? He vaguely remembered that there were quite a few people here when he first arrived, but it wasn't to this extent. The moment he appeared, countless pairs of eyes focused on him. All of them revealed astonished expressions. Because the 100 Formation Pagoda had been resonating these days, none of the array cultivators chose to challenge the pagoda. Those who had challenged the pagoda before had already come out. Therefore, when they saw Lu Yi appear, the nearby array cultivators couldn't help but be stunned. No one knew when Lu Yi had entered or how he had come out of the 100 Formation Pagoda at this time. Among the countless pairs of astonished eyes, Lu Yi felt a few sharp gazes. Looking up, he saw a few familiar faces. Lu Yi came to a realization. He finally understood what he had forgotten and what he was guarding against. Previously, when he was rushing to the safe passage of the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had been attacked by 2 myriad demons ridge cultivators. In the end, he killed one of them and the other was severely injured. He had opened the safe passage with a slash of his saber. He didn't know whether the other was dead or alive. Such injuries were very serious, but for cultivators, they shouldn't be fatal in a short period of time. Since the other party had recognized him and suffered such a huge loss, as long as he didn't die immediately, he would definitely send a message to the outside world and call for friends. In that case, his whereabouts would be exposed. In other places, he could hide and escape, but in the 100 Formation Pagoda, there was only one exit. As long as he came out of the 100 Formation Pagoda, he would definitely be blocked. The pressure on his soul made him forget about this for a moment, but his instincts were still there. Therefore, even if he forgot before he was expelled from the 100 Formation Pagoda, he still put the amber into his spirit beast bag and assumed a defensive posture. As many thoughts flashed through his mind, a sharp saber light had already spread out in his field of vision. Xia Liang and Tan Xing had been guarding the exit of the 100 Formation Pagoda, so they noticed Lu Yi as soon as he appeared. Without any hesitation, Xia Liang drew his saber and slashed. The distance of several meters was covered in a flash. This slash was accompanied by an abnormal surge of spirit energy, fully displaying the might of a 9th order cultivator. At the same time, Tansheng also brandished his spear. The great spear seemed to come alive, like a dragon emerging from the sea, and stabbed towards Lu Yi with an unparalleled might. A pincer attack from 2 Cloud River Realm 9th order cultivators. At such a close distance, ordinary people wouldn't be able to react at all. Success! Xia Liang and Tan Sheng roared in their hearts at the same time. Their days of waiting here had not been in vain. They had actually managed to trap Lu Yi here. Just as they were thinking this, Lu Yi also drew his saber at the same time. As he drew his saber, his figure flickered to the side. Not only that, a solid defensive spirit rune appeared on the surface of his body. With a cracking sound, the newly formed defensive rune was struck by the long spear. With the point of contact as the center, cracks spread out in all directions, and the rune shattered with a bang. The power of Tan Sheng's spear was evident. However, in the instant the defensive rune was blocked, Lu Ye's body moved slightly to the side, and the long spear almost brushed past his armpit and pierced through his clothes. Lu Yi felt a burning pain on the skin beside his ribs. It was conceivable that if the defensive rune hadn't blocked at the critical moment, this spear would have pierced through his chest. If that happened, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Although he had brushed past death, Lu Ye's eyes were unprecedentedly clear. At this moment, the huge pressure on his soul seemed to have been relieved. The long saber in his hand blocked Xia Liang's slash. The sharp saber light shattered with a bang, and sparks flew everywhere. Xia Liang's body shook slightly, and his brow furrowed. The feeling of this saber strike made him realize that something was wrong. This Lu Yi was much stronger than he had imagined. The last time he fought with Lu Yi was in Fox Immortal Valley. At that time, Lu Yi had asked him to teach him his saber technique. At that time, Xia Liang felt that Lu Yi was stronger than an ordinary fourth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, but it wasn't that exaggerated. But now, the strength that Lu Yi had shown was simply astonishing. This was because the other party had actually blocked his long-prepared saber strike head-on, and it was under the circumstances that he and Tan Xing had joined forces. What did this mean? This obviously meant that Lu Yi was qualified to fight him head-on. In a life-or-death battle, Xia Liang didn't have time to think too much. His saber strike, which he had been so determined to kill, failed, so he took advantage of the situation to change his move. His long saber swept past Lu Ye's mountain saber and went for his neck. At such a close distance, this saber strike could be described as extremely dangerous. The mountain saber suddenly rose up, killing Xia Liang's intentions in advance. But in the next moment, Lu Yi flew sideways as if he had been struck by lightning. Tan Xing's spear had failed to kill Lu Yi. When it pierced through Lu Ye's armpit, it shook a little. With this shake, the long spear struck Lu Ye's ribs like a whip. Lu Yi felt the blood and qi in his abdomen tumble, and the pain in his ribs was unbearable. He could even hear the faint sound of bones breaking. Fortunately, he borrowed the force of this blow to soar into the air and rush to the side. Behind him was the 100 Formation Pagoda, so there was no way out. In front of him was Tan Xing and Xia Liang, so if he wanted to survive, he could only break through to the side. Tan Xing's spear strike had injured him, but it had also given him an opportunity to take advantage of it. "Where do you think you're going?" Xia Liang was furious. The sound of his saber rang out as he caught up with Lu Yi at an extremely fast speed and stabbed his saber straight at Lu Ye's back. He was from the Wild Saber sect and had cultivated for a long time. In terms of saber skills, he was much stronger than Lu Yi. The only thing he lacked compared to Lu Yi was experience in life and death battles. This wasn't to say that he lacked experience in this area. At his level of cultivation, there was no cultivator who hadn't experienced a few life and death crises. It was just that Lu Yi had a place like the Mirage Realm to train. Ever since he obtained the Breath Fruit Core, he had died countless times in the Mirage Realm. Xia Liang didn't have this kind of convenience. Therefore, in the face of a life and death crisis, Lu Yi had experience that ordinary people couldn't compare to. At this moment, the Heart's Eye secret technique played a crucial role. The aura of death followed behind him like a shadow. If it were any other cultivator, they would have turned around to block. However, Lu Yi didn't even look at it. The moment Xia Liang's saber was about to reach him, he activated a defensive spirit rune. This defensive rune still couldn't block Xia Liang's saber and shattered the moment the tip of the saber pierced over. The tip of the saber pierced 3 inches into Lu Ye's flesh, almost piercing his internal organs, but it was enough to exhaust the power of Xia Liang's saber. A monstrous heat wave swept out. Somewhere in the crowd, 2 lifelike fire dragons shook their heads and swung their tails as they rushed towards Lu Yi. It was Chu Yin and Zhou Pei. The 2 of them were Dharma cultivators, so their reaction speed was slightly slower than Xia Liang and Tan Xing's. It wasn't until Lu Yi fought with them that they used their techniques. But it was just the right time. At this moment, Lu Yi was injured by Xia Liang and the defensive barrier behind him shattered. The 2 fire dragons slammed into Lu Ye's back one after the other. Lu Yi was enveloped in a sea of flames. The huge impact caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood, which evaporated in the scorching heat. Immediately after, under the gaze of countless people, Lu Ye's figure, wrapped in flames, broke through a layer of ripples and disappeared without a trace. The situation was the same as when he sent the Sixth Order cultivator flying with his saber in the safety passage. Chapter 680. Other than the safe passage from 100 Array City and the 1,000-meter radius around the 100 Array Pagoda, there were all kinds of spirit arrays within 30 miles of the 100 Array Pagoda. These spirit arrays were left behind by array cultivators who came to the 100 Array Pagoda to cultivate since ancient times. Due to the unique resonance of the 100 Array Pagoda and the accumulation of time, these spirit arrays were far more powerful than ordinary spirit arrays, even if they were left behind by Cloud River Realm cultivators. There were many danger zones in the Cloud River battlefield, such as those occupied by Overlord-level demon generals or some natural danger zones. But if all the danger zones were ranked, the area around the 100 Array Pagoda would definitely be in the top 3. One of the people who ambushed Lu Yi in the safe passage was sent into this danger zone by Lu Yi. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. After a few days, Lu Yi followed in his footsteps. Xia Liang raised his saber and frowned as he watched Lu Ye's figure disappear. He was powerless to stop him unless he was willing to chase after him. But he wasn't an array cultivator, so he didn't dare to rashly enter such a danger zone. Even the array cultivators present didn't have the guts to enter such a place. The sudden change shocked everyone present. Although array cultivators from both camps came to the 100 Array Pagoda to train all year round, no one had ever fought here. After all, they were all here to improve their attainments in Array Dao. It would be unreasonable to fight. So, the atmosphere here had always been harmonious. Even if the array cultivators belonged to different camps, they could still compare their skills and verify what they had learned. But on this day, the peace was finally broken. Fortunately, the battle ended quickly. An array cultivator who came out of the 100 Array Pagoda was sent into the danger zone by 4 Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators. That's Lu Ye? Someone in the crowd suddenly asked. Affected by the huge amount of information, Lu Yi instinctively put the amber into his spirit beast bag when he came out of the 100 Array Pagoda, completely forgetting to wear his mask. When he appeared, many people saw him. Naturally, there were people who recognized him. The crowd was in an uproar. The incident of 20 million Demon Ridge cultivators being poisoned to death in the mine had caused an uproar. After all, it was too shocking. Although some time had passed, the storm still hadn't subsided. Even the array cultivators who cultivated here all year round had heard that Myriad Demon Ridge was tracking Lu Ye's whereabouts. But they didn't expect him to appear in the 100 Array Pagoda and be killed as soon as he appeared. Recalling Lu Ye's figure wrapped in flames when he finally fell into the danger zones, no one thought that he had any hope of surviving under such circumstances. After all, the array cultivators were 9 9th Order cultivators. Xia Liang turned his head to look at Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. Whether Lu Yi was dead or not, the two of them were the ones who knew best. After a moment of silence, Chu Yun and Zhou Pei shook their heads. If Lu Yi died, their contribution points would definitely change. There would also be blue fluorescent battle imprints floating towards them, but none of this happened. Every one of the 4 who attacked Lu Yi had injured him, and he was wrapped in 2 spirit techniques that turned him into a ball of fire. How was he still alive? How tough was Lu Ye's life? Tan Sheng's expression was also a little ugly. To be honest, it was really surprising that Lu Yi could survive. Thinking back to Lu Ye's growth since he met him, Tan Sheng couldn't help but shudder because he could feel that Lu Ye's cultivation had improved again. Now, he had reached the 6th Order Cloud River Realm. Back in the hunting ground, Lu Yi could only flee in panic like a stray dog when he was being chased by him. But now, Lu Yi could still survive under the joint attack of him and Xia Liang. During this period of time, it could be said that he had watched Lu Yi grow at an astonishing rate. Brother Xia, if you don't kill the snake, there will always be hidden dangers, Tan Sheng said softly. How could Xia Liang not know this? These days, he and Tan Sheng had been trying to take Lu Ye's life, but they rarely had the chance to fight. This time, they were the closest to success, but they still failed. Thinking so, he said loudly, "Fellow Taoists of Myriad Demon Ridge, this wild saber sex Xia Liang has a request. Can you please break the spirit array and find the trace of the person who escaped?" Xia Liang had also heard of the danger zone outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. He didn't dare to barge in like this. However, most of the people gathered here were array cultivators. If the array cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge could join forces and break the array, Lu Ye would have nowhere to hide. If he was alive, he wanted to see him. If he was dead, he wanted to see his corpse. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to rest easy in the future. The Wild Saber sect was a famous first-grade sect, and Xia Liang had a 9th order cultivation. As soon as he opened his mouth, an array master shouted in the crowd, "Dare I ask fellow Taoist Xia, is the person who escaped just now Lu Yi of Jade Blood Sect?" Although there were already people who recognized Lu Yi and said his name, among those present, only Xia Liang and the others had actually seen Lu Yi in person. Until there was conclusive evidence, no one could be sure that it was Lu Yi. At this time, Xia Liang naturally wouldn't hide it. He nodded and said, "Yes, that is Lu Yi of Jade Blood Sect. It really is him." The array master who spoke gritted his teeth. "This bastard has done all kinds of evil, killing our Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators everywhere. His evil deeds are too numerous to be recorded, but he still dares to come to the 100 Array Tower. As an array master, this Zhang is ashamed to be associated with such a person. Fellow Taoist Xia, count me in to break the spirit array." As soon as one person spoke, more array masters echoed, and for a moment, there was a chorus of voices. However, there were many people from Grand Heaven Alliance present, and all of them frowned. But in this situation, they didn't dare to act rashly, otherwise, it would inevitably lead to a chaotic battle. There were too many cultivators gathered here. Once the battle broke out, not to mention the fact that there was no one in charge here, they wouldn't be able to form an army. Even Xia Liang and the other 9th Order cultivators were a huge deterrent. If the battle really broke out, Grand Heaven Alliance would definitely suffer. So, even if they were unhappy, no Grand Heaven Alliance cultivator stood out to refute. The situation was very good for Xia Liang and the others. After a while, under the leadership of Xia Liang, Tan Sheng, and the others, many Myriad Demon Ridge Array Masters began to break the spirit arrays in the danger zones. This was unprecedented. Although there were many spirit arrays in the danger zones and they were very dangerous, if the Myriad Demon Ridge really worked together, they could raise the danger zones to the ground. At that time, it would be fine if Lu Yi died, but if he didn't, he would have nowhere to hide. The formation cultivators who had been harmonious suddenly became very distinct. The Myriad Demon Ridge Array Masters were working hard to break the spirit arrays, while those from Grand Heaven Alliance gathered together and watched from afar. Xia Liang and the others ignored them. Finding Lu Ye's whereabouts was more important, and it wasn't time to complicate matters. In the Grand Heaven Alliance camp, the cultivator surnamed Luo looked at the 100 Formation Pagoda with stormy waves in his heart. Everyone's attention was drawn to the conflict just now, but only he, who was prejudiced by his first impression, noticed some abnormalities. Or rather, the others noticed it too, but they didn't think much about it. Lu Yi came out of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Array Masters generally didn't spend much time challenging the pagoda. If they failed, they would be teleported out. Even if they succeeded, they could only stay in it for a while. Moreover, the 100 Formation Pagoda had been resonating recently, which was a benefit that Array Masters dreamed of. So, since a few days ago, no Array Masters entered the 100 Formation Pagoda and those who were inside came out early. Until today, when Lu Yi appeared. In other words, Lu Yi had been in the 100 Formation Pagoda for the past few days. He had also silently calculated that the 100 Formation Pagoda had resonated a total of 34 times recently. Excluding the first time, it would be 33 times, which corresponded to the number of floors in the 100 Formation Pagoda. He had always thought that it was Lu Yi who was challenging the pagoda. But if that was really the case, then it was too exaggerated. In the Sky Yen sect, he had passed 33 floors in one go and triggered 33 resonations. In the Cloud River battlefield, he could also pass 33 floors in one go and trigger 33 resonations? What kind of terrifying Array Dao talent was this? What kind of profound Array Dao attainments did the current Lu Yi have? From what he knew, the highest record of the 100 Formation Pagoda in the Cloud River battlefield was the 25th floor. In other words, no one had ever passed the 26th floor. And the one who had left this record was an Array Dao Grandmaster from 300 years ago. That person's Array Dao attainments were unprecedented and had reached a height that no one in the 9 states had ever reached. Even that great Grandmaster didn't pass all 25 levels in one go when he challenged the 100 Formation Pagoda. Instead, he did it multiple times. Especially after the 20th level, he could only pass one level each time. He had to wait until his attainments in Array Dao improved before attempting the next level. At that time, this Array Master was famous throughout the 9 provinces. With his strength, he could have lived until now. Unfortunately, this guy was a bit of a playboy. In the end, because of jealousy, he was killed by an expert from the same camp. It was really a pity. Passing the 25th floor already gave him such a dazzling achievement. It was hard to imagine what Lu Ye's Array Dao attainments would be in the future after passing 33 floors in one go and triggering 33 resonations. If such a person died just like that, it would definitely be a great loss to the Grand Heaven Alliance. But in the current situation, even if he wanted to save him, he was powerless unless he could incite the other Array Dao Grandmasters of the Grand Heaven Alliance to fight to the death with the Myriad Demons Ridge. As this thought flashed through his mind, Cultivator Luo sighed softly. He had clearly seen the scene of Lu Yi falling into the danger zone. Under such a terrifying attack, it would have been difficult for him to survive. He was probably already dead by now, right? What a pity, what a pity. The Array Dao Grandmasters of the Myriad Demons Ridge were breaking the array on a large scale. Xia Liang and the rest stood at the side and waited. At the same time, they were also vigilant of the Array Dao Grandmasters of the Grand Heaven Alliance. He turned his head to look at Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. The two of them shook their heads slowly. The former said, "He's not dead yet." He was extremely puzzled. How could he not be dead? 7017K. Chapter 681. The 4 people who attacked Lu Yi were all 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators, and each of them had injured him. Tan Sheng's spear hit Lu Ye's waist, while Xia Liang's saber pierced Lu Ye's body, breaking his spirit energy shield. Then, 2 powerful spirit techniques wrapped around him and turned him into a ball of fire. In that situation, it was equivalent to Lu Yi taking 2 spirit techniques head-on without any protection. In all fairness, no matter which of the 4 people suffered such treatment, they wouldn't have survived. But why didn't Lu Yi die? Soon, the spirit array where Lu Yi disappeared was broken. Xia Liang immediately went forward to investigate, but all he saw was blood splattered on the ground, but there was no trace of Lu Yi. This guy really didn't die. This is troublesome. Thinking about it, the best situation right now was for Lu Yi to struggle at death's door. Although he hadn't died yet, he wouldn't live for long. If that was the case, then he would have done his best this time. Even if he couldn't get Lu Yi's body to exchange for the huge bounty, at least this malignant tumor would be eradicated. Without Lu Yi's deterrence, he could boldly seek revenge on Li Baxin. But this was only the most ideal situation after all. He had to consider other possible scenarios. For example, Lu Yi was only seriously injured and was currently hiding somewhere in the danger zones to heal himself. If that was the case, he could find a way to break the spirit array and leave. This guy's attainments in the Tao of Arrays were extremely high, and after coming out of the 100 Formation Pagoda, his Array Tao cultivation must have improved again. Thinking of this, Xia Liang couldn't help but feel a little irritated. Ever since he came into contact with Lu Yi, everything had gone wrong. In order to hunt this guy down, he had already wasted several months of cultivation. While the Myriad Demon Ridge Array cultivators were breaking the spirit arrays, Lu Yi passed through the spirit arrays with a pale face, secretly feeling lucky. Fortunately, the spirit technique that attacked him at the last moment was a fire attribute spirit technique, allowing him to urge the power of his talent tree to save his life. If it had been any other type of spirit technique, he might not have survived. Xia Liang and the others were curious as to why he didn't die under such an attack. If they knew how he killed Sacred Flame Sex Huo Liaoyuan, they wouldn't have so many doubts. With the innate skill tree, Lu Ye's resistance to fire element spells was unmatched by anyone else. However, even though he could block the power of the spell, he couldn't block the impact of the spell itself. Therefore, he was still injured by the impact of the 2 fire dragons. Moreover, before that, Xia Liang had stabbed him in the back, 3 inches into his flesh. His current state could be said to be heavily injured. The enormous pressure on his soul had already made him dizzy and his thoughts sluggish. Now that his physical body had also suffered heavy injuries, it could be said that he was in an extremely bad state. Fortunately, he managed to escape into the danger zone covered by countless formations in time. The place he had entered was not chosen at random. Before he entered the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had already anticipated the situation he would encounter when he exited the pagoda. The reason why he insisted on entering the pagoda and risked his life was because he wanted to use this danger zone to escape. Before he entered the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had deliberately observed his surroundings. The place he had entered was not far from the exit of the 100 Formation Pagoda. There was an illusory formation that didn't have any destructive power. Therefore, when he exited the pagoda, although Lu Yi didn't remember many things in time, after he was attacked, he immediately remembered the escape route he had left behind. With the help of Tan Sheng's spear, he escaped in that direction. If Xia Liang and the others had the guts to pursue him, he would really have been doomed. Unfortunately, in the face of such a strange formation, who would dare to pursue him? Only then did he have the hope of escaping. The illusory formation he had entered had been operating for an unknown period of time. Its power was ridiculously great. Any Cloud River tier cultivator who entered would probably be filled with illusions, unable to distinguish north from south. However, Lu Ye's soul was ultimately much stronger than cultivators of the same cultivation level. He was only slightly affected, and was fine as usual. He didn't break the formation. Instead, he chose to use his own unique method to sneak out of the range of the formation. This way, the formation could still be used to block any possible pursuers. Observing the construction of his Insight Spirit inscriptions, Lu Yi constantly observed his surroundings. He saw that there were many hidden spirit arrays in all directions. The number of them was shocking. However, under the effect of his Insight Spirit inscriptions, these spirit arrays basically had no place to hide. This saved Lu Yi a lot of time. He passed through the gaps between the spirit arrays and continued forward. However, he didn't go far before he reached a dead end. Looking around, he saw that the different spirit arrays were tightly connected, leaving not even a single gap. In this way, unless Lu Yi stayed where he was, he would inevitably enter an unknown spirit array. Helpless, he could only try his best to choose a spirit array that didn't look so dangerous, sneak in, and leave from another direction. Lu Yi continued forward like this for more than 2 hours, but he still couldn't leave the danger zone covered by so many spirit arrays. Furthermore, there was another embarrassing thing that happened, which was that he had lost his way. Logically speaking, this kind of thing shouldn't happen to him. After all, he was still a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. However, there were many spirit arrays operating here, which seriously interfered with his judgment. Coupled with his poor condition at the moment, his soul and body were under double pressure, so for a moment, something that shouldn't have happened actually happened. Feeling a little dizzy, Lu Yi stopped. Since he couldn't leave this place in one go, he could only quickly heal his injuries. Although he didn't know where he was now, even if there were pursuers behind him, it wouldn't be easy to find him. So, for the time being, his situation was safe. First, he had to heal his injuries. After he recovered, he would find a way to leave this place. Making up his mind, Lu Yi took Hooper out of his spirit beast bag and asked Dee to keep watch while he sat down cross-legged. He had already swallowed a healing pill when he was on his way here, so his injuries were improving. The knife wound caused by Xia Liang wasn't serious, only 3 inches into his flesh. It was just a flesh wound. With his physique and the effect of the healing pill, it wasn't difficult for him to recover. The real damage caused by that knife was that it had broken through his defense. The serious injury was the injury to his internal organs. Tan Sheng's spear was like a whip, fiercely whipping his waist, causing his internal organs to shift and his ribs to crack. After that, he was hit by the 2 fire dragons, so his internal injuries were even more serious. However, Lu Yi had suffered more serious injuries before, so it wasn't a big problem. As long as he had enough time, he could recover. The most important thing now was to quickly comprehend and digest the huge amount of knowledge about spirit arrays in his mind and relieve the pressure on his soul. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to focus on many things. Letting the healing pill take effect, Lu Yi urged the river of spirit energy to cycle back and forth, healing his injuries. At the same time, he immersed himself in comprehending the huge benefits he had obtained from the 100 Formation Pagoda. Time passed by. While Jiang Yi was meditating and recuperating, outside the 100 Formation Pagoda, the array formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were in full swing. Array formations that had existed for many years were being broken one after another. The array formation cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance were furious but did not dare to say anything. No matter what the original intention was, these remaining formations outside the 100 Formation Pagoda were treasures left behind by their ancestors. Many formation cultivators would study these formations when they had nothing to do and verify what they had learned. But now, these formations that had existed for who knows how many years were being broken one by one. Looking at the momentum of the Myriad Devil Ridge, it seemed that they were going to break all the formations. If that really happened, the area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda would no longer be known as a dangerous place. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to completely flatten the numerous formations that covered a radius of 30 miles. After a hurried day, Lu Yi opened his eyes and slowly exhaled in a hidden formation 10 miles away from the 100 Formation Pagoda. The gift from the 100 Formation Pagoda wasn't easy to digest, but after a day of unremitting effort, the pressure on his soul had finally lessened. At the very least, it wouldn't affect his thinking like before. There was no need to rush the rest. It wouldn't be too late to slowly digest it in the future. His physical injuries hadn't fully recovered yet, but they were no longer a problem. After a day's delay, it was time to leave. Lu Yi stood up and called out to, "Let's go." He responded and rushed into Hu Po's body. In a situation where she might encounter outsiders at any time, she generally wouldn't show herself. Everyone knew that Lu Yi had Hu Po by his side, but very few people knew that he had Yi by his side. At certain critical moments, Yi could play a crucial role. Hu Po jumped onto Lu Yi's shoulder and squatted down. He narrowed his eyes and assumed a lazy posture. It was worth mentioning that Hu Po and Yi's current cultivation was equivalent to the 6th Order Cloud River realm. Lu Yi had broken through to the 6th Order when he passed the 15th floor of the 100 Formation Pagoda, while Yi and Hu Po had broken through a few floors later. Looking at it this way, the gap between her and Lu Yi's cultivation wasn't that big. Lu Yi's cultivation progressed rapidly because he swallowed a large number of spirit pills every day. Even without a spirit stick to use, his cultivation was still growing little by little. This was something that no other cultivator could achieve. And the main reason why the 2 little ones could keep up with Lu Yi's cultivation speed was because of Hu Po. During this period of time, he had always been lazy, as if he didn't get enough sleep. In fact, he wasn't lazy, but he had been digesting monster cores. Lu Yi ate pills and Hu Po also ate pills. The difference was that Lu Yi ate source spirit pills, while Hu Po ate monster cores of monster beasts. The energy contained in monster cores was much greater than source spirit pills, which was why Hu Po had always been like that. He spent more of his energy on digesting monster cores. In addition, Lu Yi's cultivation was ultimately just his own. But the 2 little ones were different. Their cultivation was always double the happiness. No matter whose strength increased, it would be beneficial to the other. Lu Yi wouldn't be surprised if their cultivation surpassed his one day. With the support of the Insight Spirit inscriptions, Lu Yi searched for the flaws in the spirit array. Soon, he broke out of the spirit array while keeping it intact. To be continued. Chapter 682. In fact, the best way to escape from such a dangerous place was to fly away on a magic tool. However, Lu Yi had tried all sorts of places and found that they were all covered by the flight restriction formation. He couldn't fly at all. Moreover, the flight restriction formation was the most powerful formation he had encountered so far. Even with his current foundation, he could barely fly 7 feet above the ground. This was obviously not something a cloud river tier formation cultivator could do. Thinking back to the information and rumors he had bought about the 100 Formation Pagoda from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, Lu Yi understood that this should be an inexplicable mutation. There were many formations in the dangerous place, and the flight restriction formation definitely existed. However, it shouldn't be this powerful, nor should it cover such a large area. However, the 100 Formation Pagoda would often emit strange rhythms. These rhythms not only had the effect of enlightening formation cultivators, but also caused many of the formations in the dangerous place to undergo some unpredictable changes. This was also the reason why the formations in the dangerous place were so extraordinarily powerful. Many common-sense things were no longer useful in such a dangerous place. Lu Yi couldn't help but suspect that this mutation had something to do with him being unable to escape from this dangerous place. He seemed to be moving in one direction, but in reality, this might not be the case. This was a little difficult. If this was really the case, unless he chose to completely destroy all the formations he encountered, it would be very difficult to escape from here. Inside a trap formation, Lu Yi stopped and looked at a skeleton in front of him. Along the way, he had encountered several skeletons like this. These were obviously formation cultivators who had rashly entered the dangerous place to break the formations because of their superior abilities. In the end, it was easy to enter, but they couldn't leave. In the end, they were trapped to death here. Judging from the traces left behind on these skeletons, they had all died in different eras. Most of them had died from the power of the array formation. However, the skeletons in front of him had a dent in the skull, and the entire skull was cracked. This was clearly suicide. It was hard to imagine how desperate a Cloud River tier cultivator would be to choose to end his life in such a way. Lu Yi put away the storage pouch beside the skeleton. Just like the storage pouches he had put away before, the restriction locks inside had long since been broken. Without a cultivator's spiritual power pouring in for a long time, the restriction locks would not be able to function for a long time. After a brief inspection, Lu Yi didn't find anything good in the storage bag, but he didn't care. He didn't even have the intention to collect the corpse. He stepped forward and passed through the formation. After this trip to the 100 Formation Pagoda, his array Dao attainments had become much stronger than before. Now, he was constantly digesting the 100 Formation Pagoda's gifts as he walked through the danger zone. If it was in the past, he would have to expend quite a bit of effort to pass through the layers of formations after falling into such a dangerous place. But now, it was as easy as breathing and drinking water. This kind of dangerous land that could make it difficult for formation cultivators at the Cloud River tier to move an inch was as easy as walking on flat ground for him. With a single step, he entered another formation. At a certain moment, when Lu Yi passed through another spirit array, he suddenly raised his head and looked ahead, a look of surprise in his eyes. Along the way, all kinds of formations emerged one after another. Basically, they were all connected to each other without the slightest gap. However, the space in front of him didn't show any signs of being enveloped by a formation. This was a little strange. What entered Lu Ye's field of vision was a high platform that was several square meters in size. It was strange that there was such a thing in the danger zone outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. What made Lu Yi even more curious was that there was a vaguely familiar figure on the high platform. The figure was walking back and forth on the platform, but seemed to have encountered some problem and was scratching his ears and cheeks. That figure was the cultivator surnamed Yu, whom he had sent flying with a single blow in the safe passage from 100 Formation City to the 100 Formation Pagoda. At that time, this person was injured by Lu Yi and fell into the danger zone. Lu Yi didn't chase after him because he felt that the other party probably wouldn't survive. He didn't expect to meet him here. Was this guy so lucky? On that strange high platform, the cultivator surnamed Yu was busy scratching his ears and cheeks. Suddenly, he felt something strange and looked up, meeting Lu Ye's mocking gaze. His entire body instantly cracked. "It's you!" The cultivator surnamed Yu couldn't believe his eyes. How did this bastard Lu Ye find this place? Previously, he was sent flying by Lu Ye's blow and fell into the danger zone. Fortunately, he didn't trigger the formation and fled in panic. He didn't know how he ended up here. Seeing such a high platform, he naturally had to study it carefully. Unfortunately, Lu Ye appeared before him before he could find any clues. My opportunity! The cultivator wailed inwardly. Although he didn't want to give up the opportunity on the high platform, he also knew that he was no match for Lu Ye. Lu Ye's previous blow had completely scared him out of his wits. Therefore, after recognizing Lu Ye, this person decisively fled to the back, instantly crashing into a spirit array behind him. However, his luck didn't seem to be very good this time. Following a violent buzzing and flames, a powerful formation seemed to have been activated. After a few miserable screams, everything returned to normal. Lu Ye watched silently. Even if the other party hadn't run away, he would have killed him anyway. However, the cultivator's surnamed Yu's decisiveness was still surprising. Well, it saved him the trouble of attacking. Looking up at the high platform, Lu Ye's interest was piqued. He'd never heard of such a high platform hidden in the danger zone outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. Even the information he'd purchased from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance didn't mention it. It wasn't strange when he thought about it. No one dared trespass into such a danger zone. The skeletons Lu Ye encountered along the way were the fate of trespassers. Moreover, in such an environment, trespassers wouldn't be able to distinguish north from south. It wouldn't be easy to find the high platform. What was this high platform for? Lu Ye's curiosity was piqued. He leaped up and landed on the high platform. Although he didn't know how long the high platform had existed here, it was well preserved. Moreover, the platform looked like it was chiseled from a huge piece of withered jade. It was as smooth as a mirror and didn't have any veins around it. However, right above the high platform, there were many complicated patterns that were intertwined. At a glance, it gave off an extremely chaotic feeling. Lu Ye's heart trembled as he focused his attention. The complex veins on the high platform looked like a transportation formation. However, it was slightly different from the transportation formations Lu Ye had learned about. Formations were like spirit veins. The veins weren't unchanging. Every formation and every spirit vein was formed by countless yin and yang elements intertwined. The changes within were endless. However, sometimes, a slight change could cause a huge increase or decrease in the effectiveness of a formation. What was certain was that the veins carved on the high platform were definitely a transportation formation. However, Lu Ye wasn't sure what kind of effect this transportation formation had. Moreover, under his observation, he discovered that this transportation formation wasn't complete. The void spirit veins at the core were slightly damaged. If he wanted to know the effects of this transportation formation, he'd have to repair it. No wonder that cultivator surnamed Yu was scratching his head as if he'd encountered a difficult problem. It wasn't that Lu Ye was underestimating him. No matter how skilled he was in formations, it was impossible for him to repair this transportation formation with his cultivation of the Cloud River tier. Perhaps this was the way out? Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. He'd shuttled back and forth among the many formations in this fearsome land, yet he still couldn't find a way out. However, there was a transportation formation here. This naturally made him think. Perhaps he could use this transportation formation to leave this place? Even if it wasn't, this formation had piqued Lu Ye's interest. If he could repair this formation, it would be quite beneficial to him. He immediately made a decision. He'd repair this formation and then test its power. Perhaps he'd be able to escape this place in one fell swoop. As soon as he thought of this, Lu Ye immediately got to work. He'd set up a transportation formation before. The 100 Formation Pagoda's test also included a transportation formation test. Thus, it wasn't difficult for him to repair this formation. The difficult part was that the veins on the high platform were carved. If he wanted to repair this formation, did he have to use the mountain pan saber to carve the missing veins? He pulled out the saber and tested it. To his shock, he discovered that the high platform's material was abnormally hard. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't leave a mark on it. What kind of material was this? Although Lu Ye had reached the Cloud River tier, he didn't know much about the natural treasures of the 9 provinces. He couldn't recognize what material this high platform was made of. However, such a hard material had to be worth a lot. Yet, It had been chiseled into a massive platform to support a transportation formation. He didn't know who had such a method, nor did he know why it would appear here. After trying for a while, Lu Yi had no choice but to give up. Even the mountain pan saber, which had been enhanced with the double peak sharpness spirit mark, couldn't leave a mark on it. He didn't know what else he could do. Perhaps he could directly use his spiritual power to repair the formation. With this thought, Lu Yi immediately raised his hand and pressed it against the high platform. His spiritual power surged and poured into the veins. The high platform, which had been sealed for countless years, slowly blossomed with light at this moment. As Lu Yi poured his spiritual power into it, the veins lit up until they reached the damaged area. Lu Yi controlled his own spiritual energy and used his own ideas to completely replenish the damaged formation. The moment the entire formation was completed, a sudden change occurred. Lu Yi felt an irresistible suction force coming from his palm. The spiritual power in his body was flowing out at an unimaginable speed, like a flood breaking through a dam. This change shocked Lu Yi greatly. He hurriedly tried to withdraw his hand, but he couldn't do it. In less than 10 breaths' time, his spiritual power had been completely depleted. Awu! Crouching on Lu Ye's shoulder, Hupo also sensed that something was wrong. Its tiger eyes widened. The space around them began to distort. This was a sign that the transportation formation was about to take effect. Hupa turned around and hugged Lu Ye's head. The feeling of being transported was unforgettable. If it had known that it would be transported, it would definitely have asked to hide in the spirit beast pouch. To be continued. Chapter 683. On the jade platform, Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At this moment, his spiritual energy was almost completely depleted. His injuries, which had already been stabilized, were now affected. Blood and chi surged in his chest, threatening to spurt out. These were all trivial matters. What Lu Yi was curious about was, where did this teleportation formation lead to? It caused such a huge commotion. The teleportation formation he set up could cover a range of 300 to 400 kilometers. When he was saved by the mysterious woman at the Pai River, the formation covered a range of over 1,000 kilometers. But even when he was teleported with the mysterious woman, the commotion was far less than this one. In other words, the teleportation formation might lead to a very distant place. It might even send him thousands of kilometers away. Lu Yi instinctively guarded his mind. In the next moment, an unprecedented feeling of weightlessness came over him. It was as if he had stepped on air and was rapidly falling into a bottomless abyss. Lu Yi felt dizzy for a moment. He only heard Hupo's miserable cry before he lost consciousness. You can fall unconscious during teleportation? Lu Yi knew that things were bad, but he was powerless to stop it. Hopefully the other side is safe enough. Lu Yi lost consciousness as soon as this thought crossed his mind. Sixth brother. Sixth brother. A soft voice called out to him. The voice was filled with endless fear and unease, as well as suppressed sobs. Lu Yi slowly regained consciousness. For a moment, he didn't understand his situation. Instead, a lot of unfamiliar information appeared in his mind. Soaring Dragon Realm, Feng Province, Tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, 6th Young Master Yi. A lot of unfamiliar information mixed with his original memories surged in his mind, giving him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. He seemed to have experienced something like this before. Thinking back, he suddenly remembered where he had experienced something like this before. The last time he entered the realm of myriad beasts. At that time, some unfamiliar information appeared in his mind. That information was related to his identity in the realm of myriad beasts. In a secret realm like the realm of beasts, many cultivators would be given an identity when they entered. This way, they would be able to better integrate into the secret realm and participate in the important events that happened inside. In the realm of myriad beasts, Lu Ye's identity was the young sect master of the myriad beasts sect. He had taken refuge in Two World City with Xia Qianqian and a few other maids. It could be said that he had a very high starting point. To think that something similar would happen this time, he recalled the teleportation from before and suddenly realized that the teleportation array didn't lead to a certain location in the Cloudy River battlefield. Instead, it had sent him into a mystic realm. No wonder the teleportation formation was so huge. At that time, he thought that he would be teleported thousands of miles away, but it seemed that was not the case. Although he had regained consciousness, Lu Ye's body was extremely tired. The teleportation array had drained all the spiritual energy in his body, aggravating his previous injuries, and after experiencing such a huge teleportation, Lu Ye felt that his entire body was shrouded in indescribable weakness. He was not in a hurry to open his eyes. Instead, he sorted out the information that appeared in his mind. This was a place called the Soaring Dragon Realm. It was said that there were traces of a true dragon there. The tyrannical saber villa was the force that Lu Yi came from. In the entire Soaring Dragon Realm, it could be considered a tyrant. The lord of the tyrannical saber villa, Yi Ying, started from scratch and single-handedly built up a huge family business. His personal strength was extremely strong, and he had 6 sons and 1 daughter, all of whom were dragons and phoenixes among men. Originally, such a force could be passed down for many generations without decline. However, a few days ago, bad news came. The pillar of the tyrannical saber villa, Yi Ying, had mysteriously died. Then, the tyrannical saber villa was attacked by a group of people who hid their identities. The disciples of the tyrannical saber villa either died or fled. Of Yi Ying's 6 sons and 1 daughter, 5 died on the spot. Only Lui, the 6th Yi, and the 7th Yi Lioli escaped. The brother and sister supported each other and escaped into Hua Yen Mountain. Now they had reached their limit. Lu Yi sighed in his heart. What the hell was the unfathomable Tianji up to? Last time, he was the young sect master of the realm of myriad beasts. This time, he could barely be considered the young lord of the tyrannical saber villa. His background was not bad. But the key problem was that the Thousand Beasts sect was destroyed last time, and this time, the tyrannical saber villa was attacked. History was always surprisingly similar. 6th brother. The sorrowful cry of a young girl sounded in his ears. Then, Lu Yi felt a finger under his nose, as if testing his breath to see if he was dead or not. His injuries were originally caused by the relapse of his old injuries caused by the teleportation. In addition, the burden brought about by the teleportation was added. However, in the Soaring Dragon Realm, the injuries he had sustained when he was fighting with the enemy in the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa were still manageable. Lioli. Lu Yi opened his eyes and called out weakly. 6th brother. Yi Lioli's originally gloomy eyes blossomed with light. In just a few days, her family was destroyed, and she fell from the high and mighty young miss of the tyrannical Saber Villa to a stray dog fleeing in panic. For Yi Lioli, who had always been pampered, this was tantamount to turning the world upside down. Now, she only had Lu Yi as her family left. If Lu Yi also died, then she really didn't know what to do. In the end, she was just a 15-year-old girl who had never experienced the hardships of the world. She hurriedly picked up a bowl of medicine from the side, scooped it up with a spoon, and brought it to Lu Ye's mouth. She suppressed the sorrow in her heart and said, 6th brother, drink the medicine. The warm medicine poured into Lu Ye's mouth, full of bitterness. He didn't know if this medicine had any effect, but Lu Yi was now exhausted and couldn't even move a finger, so he could only let her do as she wished. After drinking the medicine, Lu Yi became more and more tired. He said softly, I'll sleep for a while. Yi Lioli nodded. 6th brother, you rest. I'll keep watch. The sudden change had obviously made the girl's temperament mature a lot. Lu Yi closed his eyes, but didn't sleep. Instead, he quietly pondered. He also didn't expect that the teleportation array on the Jade platform outside the 100 Formation Pagoda would actually teleport him into such a secret realm. It was basically certain that this secret realm had never appeared before, and no one had ever entered it before. After all, the location of the platform wasn't easy to find. Who would have thought that there would be an entrance to a secret realm in such a dangerous place? And even if they found it, Cloud River tier cultivators couldn't enter. They needed to completely repair the teleportation array on the platform before they could be teleported in. That damaged teleportation array was like a test. Only those who passed the test had the right to enter here. In the entire Cloud River battlefield, apart from Lu Yi, no one else could repair the teleportation array. Since he was already here, he might as well make the best of it. Strictly speaking, the secret realms that Lu Yi had experienced were only the immortal Essence City and the realm of beasts. This was his third secret realm. In places like secret realms, there were many dangers, but also great opportunities. Cultivators loved to explore these places. Although he had accidentally entered this place, Lu Yi wasn't in a hurry to leave. Who knew he might be able to gain something here? Hoopa was gone. When he was teleported, Hoopa was crouched on his shoulder, but now he wasn't beside him. That didn't matter. Last time in the realm of beasts, Hoopa wasn't beside him at the beginning. He could sense his battlefield imprint, so he should be able to contact T. What was worth thinking about was what he should do in this secret realm. Generally speaking, when cultivators entered a large-scale secret realm with the background of a world, they would only enter when something big happened in the secret realm. For example, last time in the realm of beasts, the entire secret realm was destroyed. Cultivators, on the other hand, also had an invisible mission to fulfill. Chapter 684. In the cave, when Lu Yi opened his eyes again, Yi Lioli had already fallen asleep against the rock wall. Ever since the fall of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, she had been in a state of panic for the past few days. Coupled with the fact that she and Lu Yi had been on the run for several days without rest, she was already on the verge of death. The young girl's face was still childish and she wore a purple dress, but what should have been a luxurious color was now covered in a large patch of dark red. It was the color of blood. She had not taken care of herself for several days, so her little face was dirty and her hair was messy. It was unknown what she was dreaming of, but her brows were tightly knitted and her expression was nervous and uneasy. In the darkness, she suddenly opened her eyes and met Lu Ye's eyes. The young girl's expression became nervous. Sixth brother, Shu. Lu Yi raised a finger and put it to his lips. Yi Lioli nodded. There was some movement outside, like the sound of something breaking through the air. It was these subtle movements that woke the young girl from her sleep. Although her cultivation was not as good as Lu Ye's, she had still entered the Cloud River realm and her perception was still quite good. There seems to be a cave here, let's go in and take a look. A voice came from outside. Yi Lioli's expression suddenly became nervous. With her and Lu Ye's current state, once they were discovered, there would be no way for them to survive. But it was too late to hide now. She only hated herself for being so useless, falling asleep at such a critical moment. If she had detected the enemy earlier, she might have had a chance to survive. But it was useless to be upset. She grabbed the saber at her side, forced herself to stand up, and stood in front of Lu Yi. The name of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa came from Yi Ying. The word, tyrannical, was not because of his personality, but because of the extremely fierce and domineering saber techniques he cultivated. Yi Ying's children had been influenced from a young age and naturally cultivated saber techniques of the same origin. Yi Lioli's saber and Lu Ye's mountain pan saber looked similar in both shape and size. Although the young girl's body was petite and she had always been pampered, at this moment she had an awareness that she had never had before. Her sixth brother was seriously injured and could not fight. Now that her position had been exposed, she could only kill the enemy to temporarily be safe. Even if she died, she would die in front of her sixth brother. Just as the young girl was ready, a figure suddenly rushed in. It was a man in green. Looking at his travel-worn appearance, it was obvious that he had not had a good rest for several days. Before he could clearly see the situation inside the cave, a blade light had already spread out in his field of vision. This blade was like a fierce tiger descending the mountain, like a flood dragon emerging from the sea. When the blade came out, it was incomparably fierce. It was hard to imagine that a petite woman like Yi Lioli could display such a domineering saber technique. Suddenly attacked, the green-robed man's expression changed. He hurriedly brandished the long sword in his hand, turning it into a sword screen that enveloped Yi Lioli. At the same time, he shouted anxiously, "Here!" It would have been fine if he had focused on fighting the enemy, but he had to shout at such a critical moment, which unknowingly weakened his own momentum. Spirit energy surged and collided, and the blade light slashed into the continuous sword curtain. Accompanied by a shrill scream, the azure-robed man who had rushed in flew out in a sorry state. The opponent's cultivation was not much different from Yi Lioli's. Based on Yi Lioli's current state, logically speaking, she was not his opponent. However, the saber techniques of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa had always been fierce and domineering. They were known for the weak defeating the strong. In addition, Yi Lioli had the will to protect her with her life, and the opponent was just following orders. This encounter had caused her to severely injure him. Yi Lioli's eyes lit up. Just as she was about to take advantage of the opportunity to kill the opponent, a figure flashed in front of her. Another person appeared, and a fist wearing a boxing glove broke through the air from the darkness, shattering her blade light. A copious amount of energy was released, and she was sent flying. It was clear that there was more than one enemy chasing after her. There were several of them. However, the cave was narrow. The azure-robed man who had been severely injured by Yi Lioli was the first to enter, followed by this cultivator wearing a boxing glove. There were 3 others guarding the cave entrance and did not enter. Later on, this person's chi and blood surged. He was tall and sturdy, clearly a body cultivator. In such a narrow cave, encountering such a body cultivator was undoubtedly the most despairing thing. Yi Lioli struggled to get up. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth, but she still stood in front of Lu Yi. The saber in her hand was slightly raised, ready to meet the enemy. The body cultivator who came in later swept his eyes over them. He saw the blood at the corner of Yi Lioli's mouth, and also saw the weak Lu Yi lying behind her. He lightly snorted. The dignified 6th young Master Yi, 7th young Miss Yi, actually fell to such a state one day. How sad, how lamentable. Who are you people? Yi Lioli clenched her teeth and shouted. This was the most tragic thing in the world. Her family had been destroyed, and she didn't even know who had done it. What's the point of asking this now? The body cultivator indifferently looked at Yi Lioli. We were only paid to help. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your old man for provoking someone he shouldn't have. It was impossible to infer much from these words. It could only be said that Yi Ying had provoked some powerful enemy. Not only had he been killed, but his children had also been implicated. The great family business that he had built up his entire life had disappeared like smoke. Moreover, the other party clearly didn't intend to say much to Yi Lioli. Or rather, they didn't know much. 7th young Miss Yi, seeing that your old man is also someone important, you can kill 6th young Master Yi and then kill yourself. This way we can go back and report. Yi Lioli clenched her teeth. In your dreams. The body cultivator lowered his eyes. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Letting you kill yourself is only to lessen your pain. If you really make us do it, what you will encounter won't be as simple as death. Yi Lioli seemed to understand something. Her eyes immediately revealed great fear. Even the breath that she had been holding couldn't help but dissipate. Although she was the pampered young miss of the tyrannical Saber Villa, she had heard of many beautiful women who had encountered many misfortunes. She had never thought that such a thing would happen to her one day. If that was really the case, then she might as well die. Good chance. Although the body cultivator said that he wanted Yi Lioli to kill herself, in reality, he had been looking for an opportunity to make a move. Although his cultivation was much higher than Yi Lioli's and he didn't think that Yi Lioli could pose any threat to him in this situation, he was naturally a cautious person. He knew what kind of potential a person could erupt in a desperate situation. The invisible threat in his words caused Yi Lioli's mind to become chaotic. If she didn't make a move now, when would she? With a single step, spiritual energy surged around his body. The body cultivator rushed towards Yi Lioli like an arrow released from a bow. His tall and sturdy figure formed a sharp contrast with the young girl's delicate appearance. This attack was like a falcon hunting a rabbit. Facing this attack that had been accumulating power for a long time, how could Yi Lioli, who had new injuries added to her old injuries, block it? However, she didn't retreat a single step and continued to guard in front of Lu Yi. Feeling the powerful spiritual energy fluctuations and majestic aura from the enemy, Yi Lioli knew that this time, it was going to be a disaster. With such a powerful enemy, Even if she cultivated bitterly for another 2 or 3 years, she might not be a match, let alone now. She couldn't be captured alive by him. Even if she died at his hands, she absolutely couldn't be captured alive by him. Thinking so, Yi Liuli's eyes filled with the will to die. However, at that moment, a figure suddenly flashed from behind her, followed by a flash of light. "What?" The body cultivator exclaimed. All his attention was on Yi Liuli, so for a moment, he didn't see when another person had appeared in front of her. Then what came into view was a sharp, fiery red saber light. Ha! A great sense of crisis enveloped his body and mind. The body cultivator roared and raised his fist to meet the saber light. His vitality boiled and his spiritual energy surged, covering his fist in a layer of pink light. The saber light continued to fall, and at that moment, there seemed to be several saber cries, but it also seemed like there was only one. The pink light suddenly shattered and the sharp saber light cut through his fist, severing half of his arm. Ah! This time, it was both a cry of alarm and a scream of pain. He was a body cultivator, and his cultivation was at the 7th order. Although he wasn't at the top in the entire soaring dragon realm, it was still not bad. He never thought that there would be someone in this world who could break through the defense he was so proud of. Was the saber techniques of tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa so fierce? Another flash of blade light blossomed and slashed horizontally. The body cultivator hurriedly retracted his fist and raised his arms in front of his body. The blade light cut through his elbows like tofu. Following the flash of the blade light, 2 severed arms flew out. The body cultivator staggered back, blood spurting out from the 2 severed arms. All these changes made his mind chaotic. Only now did he realize that a figure had appeared in front of him. It was 6th young Master Yi who had been lying on the ground. This brat tricked me. Such a thought surged in the body cultivator's mind. When he came in, he saw Lu Yi lying there in a half-dead posture, so he didn't take him seriously. In his opinion, as long as he got rid of Yi Liuli, this mission would be completed. Who would have thought that 6th young Master Yi, who he had ignored, would have such strength? Lu Yi was shorter than him, and at first glance, Lu Yi seemed to have bumped into him. The mountain saber in his hand stabbed upwards, the sharp blade piercing through the body cultivator's jaw and into his brain. Haha! The body cultivator's eyes widened in anger as he made meaningless sounds. His body spasmed, and as Lu Yi pulled his saber out, blood spurted out. He fell to the ground and soon stopped moving. In this short 2 breaths of time, not only did Yi Liuli freeze in shock, but even the blue-clothed man who was the first to enter was dumbfounded. It wasn't until his companion was killed and Lu Yi looked over that he cried out in alarm and hurriedly retreated. But how could it be too late to leave? The weapon box at Lu Ye's waist buzzed, and 9 streams of light shot out one after another, breaking through the opponent's protective spirit energy and piercing several holes in his body. After that person fell out, there was no longer any sign of life. Chapter 685. Inside the small cave, the corpses of the 2 pursuers lay on the ground, filling the air with a strong smell of blood. Yi Liuli stared at her 6th brother's figure in shock. His familiar silhouette gave her a strange feeling. This feeling made her a little flustered, but she didn't know what was going on. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, Lu Ye's figure suddenly staggered, his long saber stabbing into the ground to prevent him from falling. After arriving here through the hidden transmission array outside the 100 formation tower, his spirit chi had been depleted, but this wasn't a big deal as he still had the energy stored in his storage ring. However, the weakness of his body couldn't be resolved in a short time. He had been lying there motionless before to restore his strength as much as possible, but at the same time, to show weakness to his enemies. After successfully killing the 2 pursuers, the little bit of strength he had recovered with great difficulty was almost exhausted. 6th brother. Yi Liuli hurriedly stepped forward and supported Lu Yi. Lu Yi shook his head, motioning her not to make a sound. Brother Lu, Brother Zhao? The shout of the pursuers came from outside. There were a total of 5 people chasing after them. 2 people had entered the cave while the other 3 stood guard outside, preventing Lu Yi and Yi Liuli from escaping. This was undoubtedly a very safe arrangement. But what the three people guarding outside never expected was that their two companions who had charged into the cave would actually meet with misfortune in such a short period of time. How could such a thing happen? Although the cultivation of the two Yi family brats wasn't weak, they were both injured and running for their lives these past few days must have consumed a lot of their strength. How much strength could they possibly display? Moreover, even if they were unharmed, it was impossible for them to kill their two companions in such a short time. One of them was a seventh-order body cultivator. How could they be so easy to kill? For a moment, the three men guarding the cave entrance even thought that there was some other master hiding in the cave. The death of their two companions made them vigilant, and no one dared to rashly enter the cave. Just as they were at their wits' end, a sudden movement came from the side. "Who is it?" one of them shouted angrily. He turned around and saw a snow-white little beast strolling out from behind a tree. That little beast looked like a tiger cub that hadn't grown up yet. On its forehead, there was a small, king character that made people want to dote on it. If they encountered such a strange beast under normal circumstances, the three of them would definitely think of a way to capture it. Although this little beast was small, the aura emitted from its body was not weak. If they could capture it and sell it, it would definitely be a considerable income. Just now, he had attacked violently and killed the two cultivators chasing after him, which was already his limit. The battle outside the cave broke out in a hurry and ended quickly. Yi and Hu Po's cooperation was flawless, and with the addition of Lu Yi and Yi Lioli, the battle immediately turned into a one-sided situation. In just a dozen breaths, there were 3 more corpses on the ground. Lu Yi gasped for breath, his face pale. Hu Po was licking a wound on his paw. The wound was very small, and only a little bit of blood flowed out. Since following Lu Yi until now, Hu Po had actually rarely participated in battles. Most of the time, he would crouch on Lu Ye's shoulder, letting him borrow strength. It wasn't that he didn't want to participate in battles, but the enemies Lu Yi encountered were mostly several levels higher than him. In such battles, Hu Po couldn't play a big role, so it was better to let Lu Yi borrow strength. However, this didn't mean that Hu Po had no fighting strength. Following Lu Yi, Hu Po relied on the qi and blood in the dragon scales to nourish his body all year round, so his physique was also extremely strong. Usually, he looked like a cute little critter, but when he revealed his true form, he was a ferocious beast. Hu Po was the white tiger, one of the 4 sacred beasts that focused on killing. Yi and Yi Lioli looked at each other. The 2 girls looked about the same age, and even their figures were somewhat similar. They were both petite, so if they stood together, people who didn't know them would probably think that they were sisters. The 2 girls' eyes reflected each other's figures, and the same thought appeared in their minds at the same time: who is this guy? The atmosphere was inexplicably subtle, and even Hu Po felt it, licking his paw even more seriously. "Collect their things and leave this place first," Lu Yi said. Yi and Yi Lioli moved at the same time. One was responsible for collecting the 3 people outside, while the other rushed back into the cave to collect the 2 people inside. Not long after, a snow-white figure shuttled through the forest. Lu Yi sat on the tiger's back, and in front of him was Yi Lioli. Yi's cheeks puffed up as she flew to the side. The little girl's lungs were about to explode from anger. "That's my position." She glanced at Yi Lioli from time to time, then quickly averted her gaze. If it weren't for the fact that she didn't want to expose the secret of her spiritual body, she would have hidden back into Hu Po's body. Out of sight, out of mind. "Sixth brother, what's up with this strange beast and this big sister?" She could tell that Lu Yi was very familiar with the girl who'd suddenly appeared. Even the white tiger was very close to Lu Yi. But as far as she knew, her 6th brother had never had such a friend. However, she could sense that the girl seemed to have some inexplicable hostility towards her. "He's a friend I made during my travels here," Lu Yi explained. "I'm an outsider now." He felt wronged. But for better or for worse, she'd explored the realm of beasts' secret realm with Lu Yi. She knew that Lu Yi had a natural identity in a secret realm with a great world as its backdrop. Although she didn't know what Lu Ye's identity here was, it seemed that he had a close relationship with the girl. It couldn't be that kind of relationship, right? Yi couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. The atmosphere fell silent, And Yi Lioli didn't ask any more questions. Lu Yi seized the time to recover, while Yi sullenly flew away. Hoopa ran even faster. I'm a tiger, so what does it have to do with me? He didn't know how many people were chasing after Lu Yi and Yi Lioli, but it couldn't be too many since they were already in bad shape. Moreover, this kind of pursuit was nothing compared to what Lu Yi had encountered in the Cloud River battlefield. So the situation wasn't that bad. More than 2 hours later, in a hidden valley, Hoopa came to a stop. Lu Yi jumped down and found a place to set up a few simple spirit arrays to conceal everyone's location. Although he was an arrow at the end of its flight, the trip to the 100 Formation Pagoda had greatly increased his cultivation of formations. Even if he'd only casually set them up, the formations he'd set up weren't something ordinary cultivators could see through. This way, he had time to catch his breath. As long as he could recover fully, he'd be completely free of danger. As for what to do next, he didn't have a clue for now. He could only take it one step at a time. After exhorting Yi and Yi Lioli, Lu Yi walked to the side and sat down cross-legged. Hoopa returned to his little beast form and lay down to nap. Yi Lioli was also recovering, but her condition was much better than Lu Ye's, so she woke up before him. She looked at Yi, who was on guard, thought for a moment, then walked to Yi's side and sat down. Yi looked at her blankly. The grievance in the little girl's heart hadn't dissipated, so she wasn't in the mood to talk to Yi Lioli. Moreover, she'd been traveling extensively with Lu Yi, so although she looked similar to Yi Lioli in terms of age and figure, she was much more mature than Yi Lioli in terms of mentality. She could tell at a glance that Yi Lioli was a pampered little girl who hadn't experienced much hardship. Sister-in-law? Yi Lioli called out tentatively. What? Yi's calm expression suddenly became flustered, almost suspecting that she'd misheard. To be continued. Chapter 686. It had to be said that women were born with a wondrous intuition, no matter how young they were. Along the way, Yi Lioli could feel that Yi's attitude towards her wasn't very friendly. Although she lived like a princess, how could she not figure out the crux of the matter? Seeing Yi's reaction, Yi Lioli pursed her lips and smiled. Looks like I'm right. She was even more certain of her guess. According to what she knew, her sixth brother did often travel to Hua Yen Mountain, but now it seemed that the trip was fake, and he really did come to visit this girl. Otherwise, he wouldn't have risked his life to come save her today. No, it's not what you think. Yi hurriedly waved her hands. She secretly glanced at Lu Yi, who was recuperating, and explained guiltily, I'm Lu, his younger sister. She didn't know what Lu Ye's name was in this secret realm, so it wasn't convenient for her to say it out loud. Younger sister? Yi Lioli pursed her lips and smiled. What a coincidence, I'm also his younger sister, his biological younger sister. She's probably not the same as his younger sister. Yi finally understood the relationship between Lu Yi and Yi Lioli, but seeing Yi Lioli's appearance, she knew she couldn't resolve the misunderstanding. She sighed inwardly and decided not to waste her breath. Half a day later, when Lu Yi opened his eyes again, he saw a shocking scene. He saw Yi Lioli leaning her head on Yi's shoulder, weeping like a pear blossom in the rain. Yi was halfway up, constantly comforting her. What was going on? Lu Yi was confused. He could understand Yi Lioli's reaction. The sudden change of events, the destruction of her family, was a huge blow to the eldest miss of tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa. But the two girls clearly didn't seem to get along before, so why did they seem to be much closer now? Sensing that Lu Yi had woken up, Yi Lioli wiped her eyes, stood up, and called out, Sixth brother. Lu Yi nodded slightly. Sixth brother, what should we do now? Yi Lioli asked. Although they had temporarily escaped disaster, the danger was still there. Who knew when someone would come after them? Moreover, she hadn't experienced many storms, so she really didn't know what to do. Lu Yi thought for a moment, then said, Take out the things we collected before. Yi and Yi Lioli hurriedly took out a few storage pouches. Lu Yi unlocked the storage pouches and took out the items inside. This is... Yi Lioli suddenly picked up one of the items that looked like a token. She looked it over and gritted her teeth. Divine Will Sect's identity token. In other words, at least 3 of the 5 people chasing after them were cultivators from the Divine Will Sect. The Divine Will sect and the domineering Saber Mountain Villa both belonged to the Feng province and were not too far from each other. However, their relationship had never been harmonious. The reason was that the current sect master of the Divine Will sect had suffered a great loss at the hands of Yi Ying when he was young. What was the origin of the grudges of the previous generation? It could no longer be verified, but this accumulated resentment had been left behind. According to the information Lu Yi had obtained, the tyrannical Saber Mountain Manor and the Divine Will sect often had some friction. However, the general situation in the Soaring Dragon realm was different from that in the 9 states. This kind of friction was normal. In the 9 states, the Hautian Alliance and the Wanmo Ridge had clear boundaries and were at odds with each other for thousands of years. Under normal circumstances, the sects that belonged to the same camp would help each other at critical moments. There was not much resentment between them. Although the Soaring Dragon realm was also full of sects and clans, the situation was much more complicated than in the 9 states. They did not belong to any camp and had many grievances. In the network of good relations between the two forces, there might be many enemies. The tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa and the Divine Will sect already had grievances. Now that the former was in dire straits, it was normal for the latter to hit them when they were down. However, Lu Yi remembered that the body cultivator had said that he would help others if he was paid to do so. This meant that the other party did not only attack because of their grievances. Someone had asked them to help. Who could it be? Although Lu Yi had come here with the identity of 6th Young Master Yi and had a lot of general information about the Soaring Dragon realm in his mind, he did not know the specific information. There was also Yi Ying who died mysteriously. The Soaring Dragon realm was similar to the realm of beasts that he had been to previously, but there were also differences. The similarity was that the highest achievement of the cultivators in these two realms was the Cloud River realm. There were no cultivators above the Cloud River realm in the entire realm. The difference was that the realm of beasts was limited by the heavens and earth. Cultivators could only cultivate up to the Cloud River realm. There was no way to cultivate further. This might be related to the environment of the entire realm. Although there was abundant spiritual power, the rules of the heavens and earth could not accommodate it. It could not even allow cultivators to explore further. Just like how the Spirit Stream battlefield could not accommodate cultivators above the Spirit Stream realm. However, the Soaring Dragon realm was not like this in the beginning. According to the information that Lu Yi had obtained, there were Divine Ocean Realm cultivators in the Soaring Dragon realm a long time ago. However, since the appearance of a ravine in the extreme north 800 years ago, everything began to change slowly. As time passed, the Divine Ocean Realm cultivators found that their cultivation did not increase but decreased instead. They gradually fell to the level of True Lake Realm. 500 years ago, there were no Divine Ocean Realm cultivators in the entire Soaring Dragon realm. This situation continued to worsen. After another 300 years, there were no more True Lake Realm cultivators in the Soaring Dragon realm. Therefore, the current Soaring Dragon realm only had Cloud River Realm cultivators. Previously, Lu Yi did not have time to think about this information that he had suddenly obtained. Now that he thought about it, Lu Yi felt that it was inconceivable. What was the reason that caused the cultivation of the entire Soaring Dragon realm's cultivators to continuously decrease? This situation gave Lu Yi a feeling. If this realm was compared to a balloon, then the size of the balloon was the size of the realm. The larger the balloon, the higher the upper limit that cultivators could reach. However, for some reason, the size of the balloon that was the Soaring Dragon realm was slowly shrinking. This caused the upper limit that cultivators could reach to become lower and lower. From the Divine Ocean realm to the True Lake realm, from the True Lake realm to the Cloud River realm. Perhaps in another few hundred years, there would only be a group of Spirit Stream realm cultivators left in the Soaring Dragon realm. If it was even longer, there might not even be any cultivators left. All these changes started from the inexplicable appearance of the heavenly ravine. The entire Soaring Dragon realm's environment was like this. It could be seen as a corner of the Cloud River battlefield. Yi Ying was a Cloud River realm 9th order cultivator. Moreover, his Tyrant Saber technique was strong and powerful. It was impossible for him to suddenly die unless he was ambushed and killed. There was a high probability that the Divine Will sect was involved in this matter. Let's recuperate first, then think of a way to take revenge, Lu Yi said. Revenge had to be taken. It was not that Lu Yi acknowledged his identity as the sixth young master of Yi, or that he had deep feelings for the domineering Saber Mountain Villa. After all, he was an outsider. It was just that this might be a test from the heavens. Now that he was the sixth young master of Yi, he naturally had to act according to this identity. Moreover, he was very interested in the Tyrant Saber Mountain Villa's Tyrant Saber technique. All along, he had been suffering from the fact that he could only explore his own saber technique. No one could teach him how to cultivate it. If he could recapture the Tyrant Saber Mountain Villa, not only would he have a place to stay in the Soaring Dragon realm in the future, he could also comprehend the Tyrant Saber technique. This Tyrant Saber technique was not created by Yi Ying. He had obtained it from an ancient ruin. It was unknown which era of the Soaring Dragon realm it was, or which sect had left it behind. If it was really a saber technique created by a Cloud River realm cultivator, Lu Yi might not be interested. Maybe Yi Ying's attainments in saber technique were not as good as his. However, since it was obtained from an ancient ruin, it was worth looking at. Moreover, he had seen Yi Lioli's attack before. That petite body had erupted with such an overbearing aura. This Tyrant Saber technique was obviously extraordinary. His own saber technique was also refined and fierce. It was quite similar to the Tyrant Saber technique. In addition, the Tyrant Saber Mountain Villa did not only have the Tyrant Saber technique. Since Yi Ying established the Tyrant Saber Mountain Villa, he had collected many things about saber techniques. These things were all things that Lu Yi desired. Originally, he was a little dissatisfied that Heaven's Secret had arranged for him to have his family destroyed and be hunted down. However, he did not have such thoughts now. Heaven's Secret's arrangement was very reasonable. He cultivated the saber technique, so he was arranged to be sixth young Master Yi. Okay. Yi Lioli, whose eyes were red, gritted her teeth and agreed. The hatred in her heart was real. Although she did not know who was the main culprit behind the destruction of the Tyrant Saber Mountain Villa, it was not wrong to count the Divine Will sect in. The hatred of her family had become the motivation for her cultivation to become stronger. One day later, in Hua Yen Mountain, a few cultivators were resting. They were talking. Those two little bastards are really good at hiding. They have not shown themselves until now. They had gone deep into this place, reading books and chasing after Lu Yi and Yi Lioli. However, until now, they had not even seen a shadow. No one knew where they were hiding. Previously, we lost contact with a group of people. We don't know what danger they encountered. Everyone, please be careful. This Hua Yen Mountain is not a good place. The person who spoke suddenly turned his head and shouted, "It's okay. Although there are many ferocious beasts in this mountain, as long as we work together." Who is there? At the same time, the cultivators who were talking also stood up and looked in that direction vigilantly. Light footsteps were heard. Under the moonlight, two figures, one tall and one short, slowly walked out of the night sky. Seeing the faces of the people who came, the cultivators were all overjoyed. "It's you two little bastards." This is really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. They were just worrying about how to find Lu Yi and Yi Lioli. They did not expect that the two of them would take the initiative to come to their door. Beside Lu Yi, Yi Lioli looked nervous. Her knuckles turned slightly white as she held the saber hilt. Chapter 687. After a day of recuperation, Lu Yi had completely recovered. Yi Lioli's recovery ability wasn't as terrifying as his, but at least she was fine. The two of them prepared to leave for Tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa tomorrow morning to take revenge. When they were resting at night, Yi, who was on guard nearby, discovered the figures of these cultivators. That was why Lu Yi brought Yi Lioli to find them. Their brazen appearance caused the cultivators to be overjoyed. They all knew about Yi Lu and Yi Lu Li's cultivation. One was at the 6th Order Cloud River realm, while the other had just broken through to the Cloud River realm. None of them were inferior to the Yi siblings in terms of cultivation, so they didn't think that the siblings would pose any threat to them. When they discovered the siblings, they all stood up and rushed over to kill them. Take care of yourself. Yi Lioli was still nervous when her sixth brother's voice rang in her ears. Then, she saw her sixth brother's figure turn into an afterimage and crash into the enemy's formation like a fierce tiger. Under the moonlight, a bright saber light cut through the night sky like a meteor, and a rain of blood suddenly fell. Screams followed. Yi Lioli stared at her sixth brother's figure in a daze, as if she was in a dream. Tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa's Villa Master Ying had 6 sons and 1 daughter. All of them were outstanding talents, dragons and phoenixes among men, but there was no conclusion as to which one of them was the most talented. Among them, Yi Lu had been traveling outside since he was 16, and on average, he only returned to Tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa once or twice a year. Search. Therefore, even if Lu Ye's current identity was Yi Lioli's sixth brother, Yi Lioli wasn't too clear about his strength. Previously, in the cave, Lu Yi suddenly attacked and killed a 7th order body cultivator with 3 saber strikes, which made Yi Lioli feel incredulous. But at that time, she didn't think too much about it, only thinking that her sixth brother had used some kind of desperate secret technique. But now, it seemed that it was her sixth brother's true ability, not some kind of secret technique. In her vision, her sixth brother held his saber and charged forward. Even if he was facing 4 enemies whose cultivation wasn't inferior to his, he was fearless. With just 1 strike, he killed one of them. That kind of invincible saber technique seemed similar to the tyrannical saber technique, but there seemed to be something different. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a second person screamed out. His chest was cut open by a saber, and his beating heart was clearly visible. With such an injury, it was clear that he wouldn't live for long. As the saber light flashed, it was already heading towards the third person. Feeling an indescribable pressure, that person's face turned ashen and his spiritual power became somewhat stagnant. He had never encountered such a thing before. Even though it was rumored that the Tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa's tyrannical saber art was incomparably tyrannical and was best at using the weak to defeat the strong, such a performance was too exaggerated. Was Yi Lu still human? The cultivation he displayed was indeed only at the 6th order Cloud River realm, far inferior to any of them, but under the pitch-black saber that seemed capable of swallowing even the moonlight, they were like helpless little chicks, unable to put up any resistance. All they could do was stretch out their necks and wait to be stabbed, unable to fight back at all. The strength of the spiritual energy made him feel frightened, and the speed and angle of the other party's attack was even more overwhelming. In just 2 breaths of time, the web between his thumb and forefinger had already cracked, and his spiritual energy was surging, making it difficult for him to control himself. My life is over. Just as he was thinking about this, the last person grit his teeth and rushed towards Yi Lioli. He was lucky that he hadn't been targeted by Lu Yi in time, but seeing Lu Ye's ferocity, how could he not know that he had kicked an iron plate? Now, if he wanted to live, his only option was to capture Yi Lioli's 7th young lady and use her as a hostage. Yi Lu was so ferocious, but it was impossible for Yi Lioli to be the same, right? It had to be said that this person's reaction was very fast. In such a desperate situation, he had found a good way to break out of it. Seeing one of the enemies rushing towards her, how could Yi Lioli not know the other party's plan? She knew that she wasn't his opponent, but she also didn't want to cause trouble for her 6th brother, so without hesitation, she turned around and ran. At that moment, a golden arc slashed over from the side. Yi Lioli turned her head and saw Yi standing there. Spiritual energy surged between her fair hands, and as the spiritual energy surged, streaks of golden arcs shot out like they were chasing the stars and the moon. Sister-in-law. Yi Lioli was overjoyed. When she had followed Lu Yi here, he hadn't shown up because he had been monitoring this place and keeping in touch with Lu Yi. Now that she saw Yi's figure, she immediately rushed towards her. The word, sister-in-law, caused Yi to lose her breath, and the technique in her hands suddenly collapsed. Even Lu Yi, who was on the other side, suddenly slowed down his blade. Did I hear wrong? What? A tiger's roar echoed through the forest. Hupo's mighty body rushed out from the side. This cultivator was already in a sorry state after being beaten by Yi's technique, and Hu Po's roar shook his mind, causing his blood to boil. By the time he came back to his senses, he had already been pushed to the ground by Hu Po. A huge tiger's head was looking down at him, a pair of tiger eyes shining with a soul-sucking light. Soul-sucking tiger's roar was Hu Po's innate ability. Back when he was in the spirit stream realm, he had helped Lu Yi quite a bit. Now that Hu Po's strength had increased, the power of this ability had increased by a lot. Even if this person was a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, he still couldn't tell east from west from the tiger's roar. He still wanted to resist, but a figure had already slowly appeared in his field of vision, holding a blood-stained saber. With a light swing, the saber returned to its scabbard. There were no sounds of fighting nearby, nor were there any screams. The battle had already ended. This cultivator was horrified. How could he not know that his 3 companions had all been killed? 6th young Lord Ye's strength was far beyond everyone's imagination. Even a 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator wouldn't be able to match such strength. 6th young Lord, please spare my life. Being a fish on the chopping block, this person begged for mercy without any hesitation. Under the night sky, Lu Yi looked down at the cultivator in front of him and said calmly, "If you want to live, then prove your worth." If 6th young Lord has any questions, this Su will tell you everything he knows. I only ask that 6th young Lord spare my life. This person's mind was still very sharp. He knew that the reason he didn't die wasn't because Lu Yi couldn't kill him, but because Lu Yi wanted to keep him alive to ask some questions. This could be seen from his action of wanting to take down Yi Luli when he saw that the situation wasn't good. But words are no guarantee. 6th young Lord still needs to swear a great heart demon oath. This person naturally wouldn't believe the promise from Lu Ye's mouth. There was no such thing as a heaven's secret oath in the soaring dragon realm, but a great heart demon oath was similar. The binding force wasn't too strong, but it was still better than nothing. If 6th young Lord isn't willing, then kill me. After he finished speaking, he closed his eyes and assumed a posture of accepting death. His attitude was both soft and hard. It had to be said that this person's reaction to a crisis was sufficient. However, from the other party's uneasy and nervous expression, he wasn't as calm as he showed. Lu Yi didn't waste any time and immediately swore a great heart demon oath. Can you speak now? This cultivator surnamed Su didn't expect Lu Yi to be so straightforward. For a moment, he wasn't too used to it. However, Lu Yi had indeed swore a great heart demon oath. If he dared to ask again at this time, he was afraid that he would really be chopped to death. May I know what 6th young Lord wants to ask? After a while, Lu Ye's expression was still indifferent. On the contrary, Yi Luli had a look of disbelief, as if she couldn't accept the information she heard. She kept shaking her head. Impossible, how could this kind of thing happen? Yi gently wrapped an arm around her shoulder. That's all I know. After the cultivator surnamed Su finished speaking, he looked at Lu Yi with apprehension. Lu Yi nodded. Then let's be on our way. The cultivator surnamed Su sensed that something was wrong. Then, a flash of saber light appeared in front of his eyes and his consciousness went completely still. Lu Yi sheathed his saber, his expression calm. What does 6th young Lord Ye's great heart demon oath have to do with me? Yi Luli sobbed softly, comforting. Lu Yi stood in place, deep in thought. Last time, when MF went to the Beast Region's secret realm, Xia Qianqian had told him that things that happened in secret realms were generally things that had happened in the past. They were reproduced through some incomprehensible method. Thus, the people they met in secret realms weren't necessarily living people. Perhaps they were just silhouettes from a certain era that outsiders like them couldn't see through. Moreover, when cultivators entered secret realms, it was usually when something major happened in the world. Lu Yi originally thought that the massacre of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa would lead to something incredible. For example, it would affect the power structure of the soaring dragon realm. In the end, after hearing the cultivator surnamed Su's explanation, Lu Yi realized that he was overthinking things. If things really were as the cultivator surnamed Su said, then the destruction of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa was merely a show of brothers reading a wall. This kind of thing obviously wasn't a big deal for an entire realm. Although it was a bit melodramatic, human nature was complex. Such things were bound to happen. Although the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa was founded by Yi Ying, it still had a second master. That second master was none other than Yi Ying's half-brother, Yi Xiong. In terms of status, he could be considered sixth young Lord Ye's second uncle. Moreover, he was his biological second uncle. When Lu Yi entered the secret realm, he obtained some simple information about this cheap second uncle. However, because sixth young Lord Yi wasn't in the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa all year round, he didn't know much about this cheap second uncle. In his impression, this guy was a very dignified middle-aged man. Yi Ying once married Madame Guo, but she passed away 3 months after giving birth to Yi Lioli. After so many years, Yi Ying never remarried. Unlike Yi Ying and his wife, who were deeply in love with each other, Yi Xiong had many wives and concubines. The two brothers didn't just have a clear contrast in marriage, they also had a clear contrast in their children. Yi Ying only married one person, but he had 6 sons and 1 daughter. Yi Xiong had many wives and concubines, but after so many years he only had 1 son. Moreover, that son was congenitally deficient and sickly. The relationship between the two brothers wasn't too good, but it wasn't bad either. Lu Yi really couldn't figure out what had caused this kind of brothers to read a wall. Chapter 688. 10 miles away from the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, there was a village called Everlasting Wind. Most of the farmers in the village had received the kindness of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, so their customs were simple and honest. Lu Yi placed Yi Lioli in a farmer's house and asked Yi and Hu to stay behind to look after her. He took advantage of the night and went to the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa alone. Yi Lioli fainted from the sudden change and hearing such grievous news. She had not woken up yet. He was not worried that someone would leak the secret. Although the farmers here were not cultivators, they were people who knew how to repay kindness. They had lived peacefully under the protection of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa all these years, so they naturally recognized 6th young Master Yi and 7th young Mistress Yi. There would not be too much of a problem if Yi Lioli was placed here. Furthermore, Yi and Hu Po were protecting her. If anything happened, Yi could send a message to Lu Yi at any time. This was a convenience that the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon realm did not have. The cultivators of this realm also had communication methods, but compared to the communication methods of the cultivators of the 9 prefectures, it was far inferior. The communication methods of the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon realm mostly relied on a type of sound transmission stone. Not only could they not send too much information at once, but there was also a huge restriction on the distance. After a certain distance, they would not be able to contact each other. It was unlike the 9 prefectures, where as long as they were in the same space, they could contact each other at any time no matter how far away they were. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. Lu Yi walked towards the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa neither too fast nor too slow. He arrived very quickly. The tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa was not small. There were pavilions scattered all over the mountain villa, and there was also a man-made saber lake. Looking down from above, the shape of the lake was like a huge saber character embedded in the entire tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa. The water in the lake could connect to every location of the mountain villa. The mountain villa was backed by a continuous mountain range. In the past, this place was also a place with beautiful scenery. However, after the battle a few days ago, this originally beautiful place had a hint of desolation. Many buildings had been destroyed. There were many figures walking back and forth in the mountain villa. These were the guards and servants of the mountain villa. Although the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa was a force, it was different from those sects and forces. Its nature was still a family force. In the previous battle, many guards and servants were killed. Some escaped, but some managed to preserve their lives and were still here. Until now. Almost unable to believe his eyes, he pointed a finger at Lu Yi and stammered, "You can't believe you're seeing Yi Lu here. Shouldn't this guy be dead?" At the door, Lu Ye's eyes swept over and saw the pale Yi Lang, and a young girl with a face full of scars kneeling at his feet. This young girl's appearance and figure at first glance looked somewhat similar to Yi Lioli. He wondered where Yi Lang found her. And from the few words he said when he beat people up, this guy seemed to have some unsettled thoughts about Yi Lioli. It was just that he didn't dare to show it before, but now he was unscrupulous. Yi Lang was congenitally deficient and had been a sickly person since birth. Fortunately, the domineering Saber Mountain Villa wasn't an ordinary family, so they had enough resources to nourish his body. Otherwise, he would have died many years ago. But even so, he was constantly suffering from major and minor illnesses. It was precisely because he had been tortured by illness since childhood that Yi Lang's temperament was extremely twisted. When Yi Ying was in charge of the family, he didn't dare to be too presumptuous and did many dirty things secretly. Now that Yi Ying's family had either died or fled, there was no longer any restraint, and he was completely exposed. Sixth brother, you're still alive? After a moment of shock, Yi Lang revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Even his face was brimming with a smile from the bottom of his heart, as if he was happy for Lu Ye's survival. If father knew, he would definitely be very happy. Does father know that you're back? Yi Lang asked. Lu Yi looked at him indifferently, and his heart was filled with admiration. Such a guy, his body was already so weak, but he was still so greedy for beauty. It could be said that his will was strong. And as an ordinary person who had never cultivated, being able to have such a reaction was enough to show his temperament. Under normal circumstances, an ordinary person wouldn't have such a reaction speed. Previously, in Hua Yen Mountain, he had heard some information from the pursuers, but he wasn't very interested in it. He just wanted to know the whole story. After all, since he had become the sixth young Master Yi, then he had to act according to his identity as the sixth young Master Yi. There had to be someone to take revenge on. Now, it seemed that the information that the pursuers had revealed before they died was not wrong. The destruction of the domineering Saber Mountain Villa was indeed a show of brothers reading the wall. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense that Yi Ying's family had either died or fled, and Yi Xiong, the only son, could still live here peacefully and even enjoy himself. Sixth brother, why are you looking at me like that? I'm your cousin. Yi Lang's expression was flustered, because the way Lu Yi looked at him was obviously a bit strange. And he didn't know why, but he always felt that his cousin gave people a very strange feeling. At this point, he opened his mouth to shout, as if he wanted to warn, but before he could say anything, a stream of light broke through the air, pierced through his mouth, and went in and out of the back of his head. Since he started cultivating, Lu Yi had never killed an ordinary person. The people he killed were all cultivators of the Wanmo Ridge who wanted to harm him. In any case, Zhuoxi was a cultivator, so it was a bit unreasonable for him to kill some mortals. But killing this Yi Lang, he didn't feel the slightest psychological pressure. The corpse fell on its back. The young girl, who looked somewhat similar to Yi Lioli, didn't react. She turned her head blankly and looked at the corpse that fell to the side, red and white things flowing on the ground. Only then did she wake up. She turned her head and looked at Lu Yi with tears in her eyes. Sixth young master, annoyed by Xie Ping and Tu Shaoqi, this young girl should have been a maid of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa. The person who punched and kicked her just now died in front of her eyes, but she didn't panic. Instead, she felt relieved and happy. Today, if it wasn't for the arrival of the sixth young master, she was afraid that she would have been beaten to death. Sixth young master, leave quickly. The second manor master will be here soon. The young girl hurriedly said. Yi Xiong cherished his only son very much. Every night, he would come to see him. Although the young girl was an ordinary person and had never cultivated, she knew that the sixth young master was not the second manor master's opponent. The sixth young master killed that bastard, so how could the second manor master let it go? At that time, the sixth young master would be doomed. Then I won't have to look for him. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows and changed his plan. He originally sneaked in with the intention of killing, but since the main character sent himself to the door, he didn't need to look everywhere. After all, he wasn't familiar with the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa. If he really wanted to find him, it would be a troublesome matter. Glancing at the young girl covered in a thin gauze, Lu Yi raised his hand and took out a piece of his clothing and threw it to her. The young girl woke up from her dream and hurriedly put it on. Don't leave for now. It's not safe. You can leave after you've dealt with this matter. Lu Yi warned. The young girl was a bit distracted. She secretly thought that the sixth young master gave people a different feeling than before. In the past, the sixth young master didn't return to the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa. However, every time he came back, he would be cheerful and cheerful. This time, however, he seemed to be somewhat taciturn. However, she could understand. After all, no matter who it was that suddenly encountered such a drastic change, their personality would more or less change. But no matter what, the servants of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa had a good impression of the young masters. This was because Yi Ying was an upright person. In his words and actions, his children were all upright and upright people. They would never do things like seek personal gain. Chapter 689. Inside the room, the door was tightly shut. Lu Yi sat boldly on an armchair, the mountain saber casually placed beside his hand. His eyes were closed as he rested. The young girl who looked somewhat similar to Yi Lioli stood to the side. The room was filled with corpses, and the stench of blood filled the air. It was nauseating, but the young girl wasn't afraid at all. The sixth young master by her side gave her a great sense of security. Sneaking a few glances at Lu Yi, the young girl suddenly said, "Sixth young master, the head manor master was killed by the second manor master." Lu Yi opened his eyes and turned to look at her. He asked curiously, "How do you know?" An ordinary person who had never cultivated, even if he was a servant of the domineering Saber Mountain Villa, shouldn't know too many secrets. After all, even Lu Yi and Yi Lioli didn't know the whole story. The young girl pointed at the corpse on the ground. "He was talking nonsense and told me some things." Lu Yi understood. Yi Lang was abnormal. If he thought the young girl was Yi Lioli, it was possible that he would say some nonsense when he was excited. This allowed the young girl to know some of his secrets. "What did you hear?" Even though he wasn't very interested in the domineering Saber Mountain Villa's matters, it would be good if he could figure it out. In the end, he still had to give Yi Lioli an explanation. The young girl organized her words, then said, "The root of the matter should be him. Actually, when the head manor master was here, he often used his status to do some shady things. However, he was loyal to the manor master, so he didn't go too far. Until a few days ago, he seemed to have done something extremely evil. As for what it was, I don't know. Although the second manor master hid it, the head manor master still found out. The head manor master was furious and ordered him to be locked up. Actually, the head manor master already knew about his bad behavior, but he didn't punish him because he was the second manor master's only son. A few days ago, the head manor master went out for some business. The second manor master contacted the Divine Will sect and revealed the head manor master's location. That was why the head manor master met with misfortune. Then, the Divine Will sect came to attack the manor master. That's why this happened. At this point, she suddenly remembered something. "Sixth young master, there seems to be people from the Divine Will sect in the manor." "I understand." Lu Yi nodded slightly. It wasn't much different from what he had heard from the pursuers, but it was more detailed. The destruction of the tyrannical Saber Villa was caused by the brothers' discord. To protect his only son's life, Yi Xiong had colluded with the Divine Will sect, which led to the subsequent events. Lu Yi didn't know why Yi Xiong would do such a thing. But if it was for Yi Lang, then it made sense. Yi Xiong cared a lot about his only son. He had a lot of wives and concubines, but in the end he only had one son. Compared to Yi Ying, who had a lot of children, he was afraid that his heart was not balanced. Moreover, his only son was a sickly invalid. It was uncertain whether he could continue his family line. Yi Ying's 6 sons and 1 daughter were all dragons and phoenixes among men. Human nature was indeed very complicated. Unfortunately, Yi Lang, whom he had spent so much effort to protect, was now lying on the ground like a dead dog. Even his corpse was ice cold. "Shoo!" Lu Yi suddenly raised a finger. The young girl quickly shut her mouth, her face becoming tense. Outside the courtyard, a figure slowly walked in. It was the second master of the tyrannical Saber Villa, Yi Xiong. His expression was dignified and stern, and there was a helpless look on his face. Colluding with the Divine Will sect was like asking a tiger for its skin, but he had no other choice. In the past, when that evil creature had made many mistakes, Ying didn't make a fuss about it for his sake. He only asked him to teach him well. But this time, that evil creature had done too many things. He had raped and killed several good women. This made Ying furious. He had to make the first move to gain the upper hand. Otherwise, his only son's life would be in danger. But now, although he had saved that evil creature's life, he had fallen into a whirlpool, unable to extricate himself. From now on, the tyrannical Saber Villa would no longer exist. This place would only become a branch of the Divine Will sect. This made him depressed. Before, in the tyrannical Saber Villa, although Ying had suppressed him, they were still brothers. In the future, he would have to listen to the Divine Will sect. His days would not be as free as before. It was all that evil creature's fault. Thinking of this, Yi Xiong was furious. He was about to teach that evil creature a lesson when he suddenly stopped. Yi Xiong sniffed lightly and his face changed. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. He jumped up and directly rushed into the courtyard. At a glance, he saw the bodies of the two guards lying outside the door. In the room, there were two auras. One of them had a beating heart and seemed to be very nervous. He was an ordinary person, so there was no need to pay too much attention to him. The other person? How could it be? Yi Xiong looked panicked. He stepped forward and slammed the door open. What he saw made his pupils shrink. Inside the room, on an armchair, a person he didn't expect was sitting upright, looking at him indifferently. At the feet of this person, a familiar figure was lying there. He didn't know how long he had been dead. Yi Lu. Yi Xiong gritted his teeth and roared. His spiritual power and blood boiled. The anger in his chest was like a volcano erupting. He didn't expect that Yi Lu, who should have died long ago, would appear in the tyrannical Saber Villa and kill his only son. Although that evil creature didn't do anything and made people worry, he was still his son. He was his hope to continue his family line. But now he was dead. Just like that, he died without a sound, just like a dead dog. How could he not be angry? You deserve to die. Yi Xiong roared and rushed towards Lu Yi without any hesitation or nonsense. If Yi Ying wanted to execute his son, then he would find a way to kill Yi Ying. If Yi Lu killed his son, then he would have to be buried with him. Yi Xiong's hair stood on end. He had never been so angry before. As he rushed forward, a long saber appeared in his hand. At the same time, Lu Yi also rushed out to kill. There was still an ordinary person beside him, so he naturally couldn't let Yi Xiong kill him. Otherwise, the aftermath of their fight would be enough to crush the girl. He had already arranged a protective array around the girl. As long as the battlefield wasn't inside the room, the girl's life wouldn't be in danger. The two figures collided in the blink of an eye. Two long sabers of almost the same length and shape collided. Sparks flew and the sound of blades rang out. Lu Yi only felt a huge force coming towards him, causing his right hand to shake. Yi Xiong's attack revealed his cultivation realm at a glance. Cloud River 8th Order. In the Soaring Dragon realm, there were many Cloud River realm cultivators, but the proportion of 9th Order cultivators was not high. Compared to the 9 states, this proportion was much lower. Perhaps it was related to the unique environment of this realm, but after a cultivator reached the Cloud River realm, their cultivation progress was extremely slow. Especially from the 8th Order to the 9th Order, there seemed to be a huge barrier. But in the 9 states, there was no such thing. From the 8th Order to the 9th Order, as long as one accumulated enough spirit energy, they could safely break through. Therefore, among the great forces of the Soaring Dragon realm, there might be many 8th Order cultivators, but there would never be many 9th Order cultivators. This was also the reason why the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, which was only a family-like force, could occupy a place in the Feng state. Yi Ying was a 9th Order master, while Yi Xiong, the second Manor Lord, was only an 8th Order master. However, due to the difficulty of breaking through, the Cloud River realm cultivators of the Soaring Dragon realm were generally stronger than those of the 9 states. Because they had been in this realm for a longer time, they could polish their cultivation more. So, when they fought, Lu Yi felt some difference. If he had not entered the 100 Formation Tower, facing an 8th Order cultivator like Yi Xiong, he might have had a hard time. But the trip to the 100 Formation Tower had raised his cultivation by a minor realm. If this kind of improvement was placed on other cultivators, even if their strength had increased, it would still be within the normal range. But for someone like Jie Dunshen, whose foundation was incomparably strong, a minor realm increase was enough for his strength to increase tremendously. There was pressure, but it was not much. Yi Xiong's strength was within expectations. Compared to Lu Ye's indifference, Yi Xiong was truly shocked. Because his angry saber attack had actually been taken away. How was this possible? He clearly felt that the boy opposite him was 6th Order, 2 minor realms lower than him. He thought that even if his saber attack could not kill the other party, it could still severely injure the other party. But in the end, it did not have the slightest effect. This boy. What's going on? Yi Lu was not in the tyrannical saber manor all year round. Instead, he traveled all over the place. He only came back once or twice a year, so Yi Xiong did not know much about Yi Lu's details. It was only at this moment that he realized that this nephew of his was much more powerful than anyone had imagined. This kind of foundation had already far surpassed that of his brothers. His anger suddenly subsided. He suddenly remembered that before he came, Lu Ye's figure was sitting calmly. No wonder he was so fearless. It turned out that he had something to rely on. But so what? Yi Lang was dead. Someone had to be buried with him. Die! Yi Xiong roared and slashed again with his saber. In a small courtyard, 2 figures were fighting close to each other. Saber light flashed, and an invisible force raged. The walls of the courtyard and the house collapsed with a loud bang. Inside the collapsed house, a young girl's scream could be heard. Fortunately, there was a protective array protecting her, so she did not suffer any injuries. She was only buried in the ruins along with the light curtain protecting her. Clanging sounds rang out along with the huge commotion caused by the exchange of blows. The entire tyrannical Saber Mountain Manor was shocked, but with such a big commotion, no one dared to come over to investigate. Only a single figure flew over from a corner of Saber Lake, the aura of a Cloud River 9th Order cultivator radiating from his body. In the tyrannical Saber Manor, there was no other 9th Order Cloud River realm cultivator besides Yi Ying. Now that Yi Ying was dead, there was suddenly a new master. Obviously, he was an outsider. Divine Will Sect's Vice Sect Master Pang Wanhai came to the tyrannical Saber Manor for no other reason than the tyrannical saber technique. Chapter 690. Tyrannical Saber Villa and Divine Will Sect both belonged to Feng Province, so there was naturally some friction between them. In particular, Yi Ying and Divine Will Sect's sect Master Xiong Tai Shan had a grudge when they were young, so Yi Xiong chose to collude with Divine Will Sect because he knew that as long as he leaked Yi Ying's whereabouts, Divine Will Sect would definitely take action. In fact, Divine Will Sect didn't fail to live up to his expectations. Xiong Tai Shan personally led 8 elders to set up an ambush and kill Yi Ying in one fell swoop. What happened next was simple. While the Divine Will Sect Master made his move, the Vice Sect Master, Pang Wanhai, led a group of people to attack the hegemonic Saber Manor. As a result, all of Yi Lu's brothers died in battle. Only Yi Lu and Yi Liuli managed to escape. Over the next few days, Pang Wanhai was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he stayed here to comprehend the Tyrant Saber technique. He had made some gains. In the end, he felt the sounds of an intense fight coming from somewhere in the manor. He was surprised and came to investigate. Arriving near the battlefield, Pang Wanhai looked up and saw 2 figures crisscrossing among the broken walls, their blades flashing. One of them was Yi Xiong, who had just separated from him, while the other was Yi Lu, who should have fled long ago. This surprised Pang Wanhai greatly. In his opinion, Yi Lu was only a 6th Order Cloud River realm cultivator, yet he was able to fight evenly with Yi Xiong. Pang Wanhai was well aware of Yi Xiong's strength and knew he was stronger than the elders of Divine Will Sect. In the entire Divine Will Sect, only Pang Wanhai and Sect Master Xiong Tai Shan could suppress him, So how could this Yi Lu be so strong? While observing, he found that although Yi Lu's cultivation base was lower than Yi Xiong's, no matter if it was the speed or strength of his saber, they were not inferior. Moreover, because of his young age, his reaction speed was even faster than Yi Xiong's. This was the reason why he could defeat the strong as the weak. This boy can't be allowed to live. Search. Pang Wanhai immediately thought. If Yi Lu was already so strong at the 6th order, if he was given enough time to break through to the 8th order or 9th order, he would definitely cause endless trouble. Although he didn't know why this kid had returned to the tyrannical saber villa, this was a good opportunity to kill him. Pang Wanhai's killing intent surged. On the other side, Yi Xiong, who was fighting with Lu Yi, was more and more surprised. He found that with his current strength, he couldn't do anything to his nephew. This made him both shocked and angry. He sensed Pang Wanhai's arrival and also sensed Pang Wanhai's surging killing intent. However, his only son had died at the hands of Lu Yi, and he wanted to kill him with his own hands to avenge his only son. If he allowed Pang Wanhai to interfere, even if he managed to kill him, he wouldn't feel at ease. Therefore, the moment he sensed Pang Wanhai's murderous intent, Yi Xiong's expression became resolute. In the end, he still had to use that blade technique. The long blade chopped down. This blade was the full force of Yi Xiong's attack. Accompanied by a crisp sound, both his and Lu Ye's figures slightly shook, and both of them floated backwards. At this moment, Lu Yi suddenly felt a sense of danger. This sense of danger didn't come from Pang Wanhai, who was watching from the side, but from Yi Xiong, who had been fighting with him. Lu Yi looked up and saw Yi Xiong not far in front of him squatting down, his hands held flat, one hand holding the saber motionless while the other hand suddenly swept across the blade, pouring his spirit chi into it. The long saber suddenly burst with a dazzling brilliance, its clear mirror-like blade reflecting Yi Xiong's cold gaze. Tyrannical saber technique. Lu Ye's heart jumped. Although he didn't know anything about the so-called tyrannical saber technique, seeing Yi Xiong's momentum suddenly change, he immediately understood what this guy wanted to do. Although the tyrannical saber technique was an ancient inheritance obtained by Yi Ying, Yi Xiong, as the second manor lord of tyrannical saber villa, had naturally cultivated it. At this moment, since they couldn't defeat each other for a long time, they could only use the tyrannical saber technique to determine the winner. Just as Lu Ye's thoughts turned, Yi Xiong had already thrust his saber. Along with this strike, Yi Xiong's spirit chi instantly reached its peak, as if it was completely released with this strike. Kill! An angry roar sounded. On the side, Pang Wanhai, who was about to join forces with Yi Xiong to take down Lu Yi, couldn't help but stop, his eyes fixed on Yi Xiong's movements. In the past few days, he had been studying the tyrannical saber technique. Although he had some small gains, there were still some things he didn't understand. Yi Ying was already dead, and the few kids of the Yi family were almost all dead. Now, the only ones who had mastered the tyrannical saber technique were probably these two people surnamed Yi in front of him. Being able to observe the tyrannical saber technique with his own eyes was naturally beneficial for him. A cold light bloomed, and a cold murderous aura enveloped the area. Then, a little bit of starlight bloomed, as if they were suddenly under a moonless night sky. The sky was twinkling with stars, and the world was quiet, with only the chirping of insects and the croaking of frogs. It was a scene of natural harmony. However, all of a sudden, the twinkling stars in the sky fell one after another, carrying the power to destroy the world. The first style of the tyrannical saber, stars. Even Pang Wanhai, who was watching the battle from the side, couldn't help but be frightened by the cold light of the saber. His skin felt cold, and his heart tightened. He was dazzled and didn't want to blink. It was rumored that the tyrannical saber had 3 styles. Except for the first style, stars, which was known to the world, no one knew what the other 2 styles were. It seemed that even Ying had never used the other 2 styles in front of others. But even just this one style was enough for him to establish the tyrannical saber mountain villa in the Feng province. Yi Xiong's strength wasn't as good as Yi Ying's. From the perspective of a bystander, this saber style wasn't perfect, but even if it wasn't perfect, its power was still outrageous. This made Pang Wanhai even more interested in the tyrannical saber art. He secretly made up his mind that after Yi Xiong dealt with this brat, he would have him practice with him. He didn't dare to refuse. In his opinion, once this saber came out, Lu Yi would have no way to survive. Even if it was him, facing such a saber, he could only temporarily dodge. If he took it head-on, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. However, in the next moment, a scene that shocked him appeared. Lu Yi, facing this saber head-on, didn't retreat. Instead, he moved forward, crashing into the stars in the sky. At this moment, Lu Yi suddenly burst out with a power stronger than before. Since the girl had warned Lu Yi that there were people from the Divine Will sect in the mountain villa, how could Lu Yi not be on guard? So when he fought with Yi Xiong, he didn't use his full strength. Until now, he didn't hold back at all. The stars in the sky collapsed, and in a flash, the stars in the sky disappeared without a trace. What? Pang Wanhai's eyelids twitched. He clearly saw that in the face of Yi Xiong's tyrannical saber attack, that brat called Sixth Yi actually sent out more than 10 sabers in a flash, blocking almost all of the attacks. A figure flew out, blood splashing in the sky. It was Yi Xiong, who had been awe-inspiring just a moment ago. Lu Yi stood on the battlefield, his spiritual power and blood mixed together. Especially on his right arm, which was holding the saber, his blood was boiling. If he hadn't cultivated the blood transfer technique, which allowed him to burst out with strength and speed far beyond his normal strength, he wouldn't have been able to block this attack. Even so, Lu Yi lowered his head to look at his abdomen. Dark red blood dyed his clothes red. There was a hole in his lower abdomen, injuring his internal organs. Urging his spiritual power to seal the wound, Lu Yi let out a light breath. The reason why he came to the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa to take revenge was, first, to act according to Sixth Young Master Ye's identity, and second, because he was interested in the tyrannical saber art. But before, he didn't think too much about it. He just thought that the saber technique of this world, even if profound, might not be as profound as what he had extorted from the Wild Saber sect. But after fighting with Yi Xiong, Lu Yi found that he had underestimated the tyrannical saber technique. This saber technique was probably something extraordinary. This made him even more interested in it. Looking at the entire 9 provinces, with his current strength, there was no 8th order who could force him to use his full strength and still be injured. But Yi Xiong did it, not by his cultivation, but by his saber. Such saber technique had exceeded the scope of normal saber technique, and even gave Lu Yi a strange feeling. Saber intent. Lu Yi had always heard of this kind of illusory thing, but he had never paid much attention to it because he always thought that saber technique was just a skill to fight with the enemy. It was a very simple thing. How could it be so illusory? But Yi Xiong's saber made him feel a trace of intent. This was very strange. At this time, if he went into retreat to meditate, he might be able to make some progress in his saber technique, but this was obviously not a good time. Ah! A scream pierced through the night sky as Yi Xiong was sent flying. It was true that he had cultivated the tyrannical saber technique, but this was the first time he had used it against an enemy because with his current attainments in the saber technique, it was impossible for him to display it. Forcibly using it would only put a huge burden on his body. At this moment, on the surface, he only had injuries caused by Lu Ye's saber, but in reality his flesh and blood had been torn apart. When he used that saber strike, his essence, qi, and soul had all been exhausted. At this moment, he didn't have any strength left. He had thought that he could kill Lu Yi with that saber strike, but in the end, his cultivation wasn't enough. Not only did he fail to kill his enemy, but he was also injured by Lu Yi. In his mind, he couldn't help but recall Yi Ying's teachings, saying that his comprehension of this saber strike wasn't enough. Against weaker opponents, it wouldn't be a big problem, but against stronger opponents, not only would this saber strike be ineffective, but it would also put him in an even more disadvantageous situation. But how could he use this kind of saber technique against weaker opponents? So even though he had cultivated the tyrannical saber technique, this was the first time he had used it against an enemy. The result was that he was full of resentment. "Brother Pang, please help." Yi Xiong, who was lying on the ground, looked at Pang Wanhai. Since he couldn't take revenge himself, He could only borrow the hands of others. Yi Lu was already injured, so if Pang Wanhai helped, there would be no problem. As it should be. Pang Wanhai was in a good mood after enjoying the battle, so he readily agreed to Yi Xiong's request. He raised his hand and grasped the void, and a long saber appeared in his hand. His fighting spirit surged as he looked at Lu Yi and said, "Brat, take 3 strikes from me and I'll spare your life." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.